Hi everyone, welcome to React Virtual Conference. I'm your host Stephen Simon, and we are back with another conference. If you're someone who is joining us for the very first time, C Sharp Corner is a community of software and data developers. And if you check the recent rank, the exciting part is we are now top 2,500 websites across the globe. So that's the exciting thing. So welcome everyone to this React Virtual Conference. As I say, I'm your host Stephen Simon, and this is going to be a really exciting power pack 3 hours of conference. I would say it's a mini conference where you'll get to learn from speakers across the globe, and we have very exciting giveaways to give. So if you are commenting anything in the live chat, please make sure that you use React C Sharp Corner hashtag in the comments, and we'll do a lucky draw after every session, and you get a chance to win some exciting giveaways. Having said that, please let us know from which location you're joining. It's always pretty interesting from which location is you joining. I'm joining from Delhi, India, and I already see some people. Jess says he is joining from Switzerland. So hi, Jess. Thanks for joining in. Drop your location in the comments. It's always very interesting from which location people are joining. You never know, someone is joining from your location. So a couple of announcements before we go ahead and actually get started with today's conference is that a few important links I'm going to drop in the comments. That this is globaltechconferences.com. So let me go ahead and bring it on the slide. Yeah, that's it. So definitely go ahead and keep visiting this platform. This is a website where we add all our upcoming conferences. If you scroll down, we plan to do many conferences this year. We have already done close to 8 to 9 conferences in the first half of this year, and we'll do 10, 15 more. We have today happening React Virtual Conference, followed by we have code quality, then Women Data Summit, IT Security, AR/VR, Azure Summit, C Sharp on the United States Conference, and many more conferences scheduled. And if you look back what we have done in the past of 2021, we have had Angular Virtual Conference, Azure Cosmos DB Conference, which was actually the official conference. Then we also have Full Stack. We did IoT, Global AI, and many more SQL Server Conference. So definitely go ahead and keep yourself updated at globaltechconferences.com. That's where we add all our the upcoming conferences. So Harman says, Rishabh, I'm joining from Punjab. Thanks for tuning in. Kalpesh, I have dropped that link in the comments, so you can definitely pick up that there. Okay, Siddharth is from Pune. He's one of our speakers, so I'll just get to host him in about 15 minutes. Rohit is joining from Noida. Kalpesh is joining from Gandhidham, so quite a diverse location, I would say. And Mahesh is joining from Philly. Philly's Philadelphia, definitely. They have nice weather. It's pretty hot here in India, actually. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and talk about our very first speaker of the day. He is a C Sharp Conner MVP, and he is going to talk about how you can actually go ahead and develop MERN, a book application. I'm not sure, a bookstore application using MERN stack. I have seen his other talks. He's an absolutely amazing speaker, and I'm really excited to host him today as he's going to inaugurate the React Virtual Conference 2021 edition. And let's go and invite our very first speaker, aka Swamy. Hi, Swamy. Welcome to React Virtual Conference.
Hey, Stephen. Thank you so much for hosting me. I'm more excited and a little nervous.
I hear you, as I say. For someone who is tuning in for the very first time at Swamy's session, I always say just put on your seat belts because his session is going to be very fast. But I promise that he's going to share some of the really amazing resources. Especially Swamy is going to drop his GitHub URL where you can definitely download all the source projects that he builds. So, Swami, what exactly you're going to cover in today's session? I do know it's a bookstore. It's going to be MERN stack, right? So, what are the topics that you're going to cover in next 50 minutes?
Wow, it's a pretty good question. Thanks so much. So first thing, we'll spend 5 to 10 minutes on seeing this MongoDB. There are multiple options. We can create the installation. We can have it on our laptop, Mongo,
Mm-hmm.
or we can host it in Atlas, Mongo Atlas, and use it from there or from the Docker. So this time I'm going a little bit different. I'm using Docker instances. So
Okay.
local Docker. So
Okay.
very
Mm-hmm.
lightweight, and on flash of a second it boots up. And
All
also,
right.
how can we dig deep into the Docker container and
Mm-hmm.
play around that? That's fantastic thing. That few minutes whatever we are spending is really great. I really enjoy that, getting deep
All
into
right.
that Docker container. And okay,
Yeah,
and
I'm,
next
I'm also
10
excited.
minutes
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and next 10 minutes we'll spend on Node Express API and
Mm-hmm.
see how we can hit this API endpoint to go and fetch the data or do the CRUD operations, whatever we are going to do through the app. We do
Mm-hmm.
it through the Postman. So we'll know the nitty gritties between excluding R in the MERN stack. We'll touch all those three. And next 30 minutes will be like an express train again.
Yeah.
You'll see this. I'll just create a shell of the application, and from there we'll fly. So
All right, so
that's the thing.
let's go. I'm always excited
Uh,
by the Atlas, right? I really love Atlas. That's I think one of my favorite. I
mhm.
recently explored, and I also love Express for Node.js to build APIs. I also love that. So again, a quick reminder to everyone that please, whenever you drop a comment, if you want to ask anything, whenever you drop a comment, please use the React C# comment in the comments. And after this session, we're gonna do a lucky draw, and some of you will get an opportunity to win C# corner swags. Having said that, Swami, feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and yeah, then we can get started. Mai says Swami loves speaking, and his presentations are thumbs up. Thanks, Manish, for your comment.
Thanks, my sir. And I still remember
Right.
C Sharp Corner was the first people who started hosting me 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh my
And
goodness, it's been a long journey.
Prakash, yeah, it's a long journey. So Prakash Tripathi and Mohit Sabra, I
Ah,
consider them as my gurus because they introduced me to this community service. If I tell this statement in front of them, they'll start shouting at me. They'll say that no, we are not your gurus. But they're not here. But I'll still say that Prakash and Mohit, thanks for introducing me to this community service.
all
Yes, sir.
right, Swami.
I am all set.
Once you move to your slides or your Visual Studio Code, I'll just add it to the screen.
Oh yes, I have shared my screen.
I see it. Once you
Flash
move
it, and then
one
I'll.
from StreamYard. Yeah, once you change your screen, I'll add it. You're inside StreamYard now. Just change it and
Oh,
I'll add
okay.
it.
Right, sir. Yep.
Yeah, everyone can see your screen. And next,
Okay. Shall I go ahead?
yeah, yes, Swami. Go ahead.
Okay. So I was just checking the speed of my internet. Sometimes it's okay. Is my voice audible?
Yes, your voice is audible. You can get started, Swami.
Okay. Sometime I'm sorry. Okay. So as I was mentioning, there are multiple options where we can go ahead and use this Mongo. So you can install this Mongo instance on our local laptop or use Mongo Atlas. It's a pretty good thing. I always use it in all my previous demos. So this is the first time I'm switching to the local container. Just wanted to try this, and I really liked it. So let's spend a couple of minutes on this one. What we can do is we can go to hub.docker.com, and hub.docker.com, and we can clearly go ahead and see see the container, see this image, the Docker image. We can search for the Mongo. I think the net is a little slow now. Explore and can select the official image, and you will have this here. This is an official image, and inside this official image, you will see that all we need to do is pull Docker pull Mongo. It gets the Mongo image on our local DB. These guys have done a fantastic job on specifying how do we need to run and the port on which it listens 2707, and they themselves has given that how do we need to run this. So we need to Docker run interactive and give the name of the image, and we can put it this 27107. And if you want to do it through the docker.yaml also, it's pretty much the same. The only difference is we use the only difference is we use this uh, the port mapping. Whatever is a port mapping, we need to do that one. That's a pretty much from that perspective. So we'll see. Come back over here and let me do Docker PS. And the moment I do the Docker PS, I will be able to see here is the Docker container which is running. And I just started 4 hours ago. Just wanted to test that everything is working. So here I will hit on 27017 on my local machine. That gets routed to 27107. Okay, that's the name of that image is Mongo in Docker. So what we can do is we can go ahead and Docker logs, and I can give this container if you want to see what's happening inside that, and you see the tons and tons of logs are flushing out. So this tool, we can use it as part of the initial investigation to find out if at all how the things are going, and some of the things which we can do first round of investigation right from these logs. Get deeper Docker inspect and give the ADF4. So we can give the first 3 or first 4 characters, but ensure that you're giving the complete ID of that. So if this guy will give you a tons and tons of information where you can come and do the second round of investigation. So it says that what is that it's going to start, and what is the current state of this the image it is using, the image ID, and what is the name which we have given. And and here you can see that the host port is 27017, and the port binding we can see this 2701. That's the same thing whatever we have seen there. And other important things is we can dig deeper into this particular stuff to learn at a high level. I'm just trying to quickly go through. So this is the /data/db. That's where this is the volume. On the volume mount, I did a volume mount so that data will be persistent. And this is the volume inside. It says data.db and data.config.db. That's a couple of things. And one more thing I wanted to highlight is the public IP. This is pretty much a very important skill set. You need to know that when you are using it on when you're using that on local, you have to definitely use that because I'll show that difference. What will be that in a minute? I'll show the difference. Why do you need to use that, right? You need to definitely need to have this. It's public IP. It will be very handy, and you'll spend hours together if you don't use this piece. And that's pretty important to know what is the public IP. Okay, these are some of the things which I wanted to bring it onto the table, which will definitely help us if we are doing some investigation. Okay, Now the next thing is, okay, this is all fine, Swami. I know that. What else you're bringing onto the table? I said, okay, let's go and do this. Rock and roll. You have to do the Docker exec IT and the image, the container ID, bin and sh, the shell. I feel more comfortable in the bash, so I can do the same thing. Docker exec hyphen IT and ADF4, the four characters. I will do bin bash. Okay, technically I'm in the same one, so you can see that host name. It's it's the computer on which, I mean, the container on which it's running. So you can see that host name, and I do an exit. If I do host name, it's uh, my host, my computer name. It comes as Viswanatha Swamy. And if I do the Docker exec and I do an host name, it shows the container name, that because technically that's the computer, or it itself is a container, so it reads it as a computer, right? So if you're command line guy, you can do this. If you're a GUI guy like me, you can do this, where you can see this running logs over here. The one which I showed you through the command line, you can come and do investigation. If something is going wrong, you can get it over here. And the other thing is stats. You can see the memory usage and other stuff over here, and you can do an inspect. Whatever I did the inspect at high level, you can do here, but it doesn't give that much of wealth of information. Whatever you have seen on the command line, you will definitely not get that much of wealth. But at least at a high level, this gives a pretty good information. But I would suggest we need to get deep down into this one. Okay, now let's do that. Now we are in container. If I do ls, I'll be seeing the file system. I do Mongo. So the moment I do Mongo, right now I'm inside my Docker container. I'm not in my local machine. You see that right now I'm inside this, and it works as a shell. I'm not using any Windows commands. I'm using the Linux commands, right? And you can see that I do show DBs, and I can see that all the DBs are there, and I can say that use books DB, and I can go show collections, and I can say that db dot books dot find, and this one, it's showing all those rows which are there in my this thing. Now I did a pretty, so you can see this few rows. Right now I have this few rows, so let me show you that in a moment. That's executing. So these are a couple of rows. These all the things will be very much important, or will be handy if you're using your local instances, local container of the Mongo, because you need to get down and to find out what all the tables which are there, why I'm unable to connect, and all those things. And I was talking about the inspect and the public IP. That is pretty much very important. Why means I'll come and I'll show you. Because let's imagine a scenario where you're executing your web API, and the web API you're executing through the Kestrel or IIS server, and right now your Docker container is in the MongoDB is inside the Docker container. So when you go to the config settings, when you go to this app settings, those technically this is applicable for anyone and everyone. So if you come to this app settings, inside the app settings, we give the connection string in one method. We say that MongoDB : /localhost 2701. Now, if you execute it here, it understands that the local host is available. Perfect, it goes in. But the moment you execute this shopping API inside the container, now it is two containers in a separate world. How does one container recognize the other container? If you try with this localhost, definitely it's going to blow. It's not going to work. So what we generally do is we can technically come and update this connection string in line number 7, sorry, line number 6. Or one more thing, what we do is, however you're executing, you need to pass this connection string and give the public IP the public IP. Whatever we have seen that IP here previously, that IP you have to specify. So again, 172.17.0.2, that's an IP. Now between two containers, it recognizes what should be the path. So that's a high level 30,000 foot about the Docker. Again, I'll show you this piece. That's very, very important because I have spent few hours time wasted. So if you see that the IP address, whatever is at 172.17.0.2, so that's what you need to specify. So have here, I can technically switch between uh, the connection string of the local when I'm executing this API using IIS Express Orchestral. When I am executing this particular API as a container instance, then I need to switch the connection string. It should not be localhost, it should be the public IP. So that's about the tip. Why do we need to have these commands, basic commands handy? Okay, let's come back to the API front because I already created this entire application. We'll go step by step, but I just created at a high level what this application is and how does it look. Let me do a clear, and so that we can keep this guy side and handy. Let me show it. I mean, we'll be doing everything, and we'll spend a lot of time. Okay, so I can quickly come and add this and come back to list. So all these things are getting tracked. Which API I'm going to, and what is the content length which I'm returning, and what is the milliseconds it is taking time. So everything is getting tracked over there. Suppose I can come to George Reddy and I'm creating his thing as an inactive. So that will be uh, all the things whatever I'm doing. I can go ahead and I can see that those things, what everything is getting tracked to the Morgan logger. We'll see about that. And that's about this one. Let's see the API first. Let me close this. Let me go to the backend. So this backend we have created using the Node.js and Express. Okay, so that's a pretty simple backend. So I'll just talk through what are the things which has been used. Anything which I wanted to highlight, I'll highlight that one. So first thing what I wanted to highlight is about these two files, env files and example.env files. So if you come to the dot git dot git ignore file, you see that .env local, .env development local, or these are the files which are being ignored by default. Okay, so if even if we use this env file, that's not going to be checked in into any project repository. So we are safe over there. Okay, we are pretty much safe over there. So I've used my connection string to my local host. And imagine, as I was mentioning, suppose if this backend, if I'm adding a Docker file and executing it as part of the container, then we should not use localhost. We should use either the container name or the public IP. I'm going with the public IP until unless we are not using the Docker Compose to spin up multiple containers. I will go by the public IP, whatever the IP which we have seen in the previous command. Okay, so ensure that please do not ever store any connection string. Then create example.env and specify what should be the connection string, just like your MongoDB, your MongoDB server, your port number, your database name, something like that. But please do not store any of those credentials or any important things there, and ensure that before checking, you're not without knowing, you're not checking these files. Ensure that those files has been tagged inside this git ignore. That's one tip. And coming back to this one, let's start seeing this one. It's a pretty much simple Node.js server. I have chalk. We can use chalk or colors, but I found chalk. People are using chalk colors, and one more guy are there in the game. So when I go and see the trend, the chart was leading. So I was more lean towards this chalk. Um, okay, that's a simple thing. So I'm using chalk.env express, express async handler, joy for schema validation, mongoose for mongodb, and morgan is for this logger. You see this, all the logging stuff which is being spit here, they are coming from this guy Morgan. So we'll see real quick. I want to show you something. Suppose if I have tweaked this one. Now I'm coming back here. I do save. Now it's node 1 is restarting my server, and it is trying to go and find the MongoDB server. And inside this persistence, I have created a file just to connect. I'm just connecting it. And if at all it is connected, I'm showing that you can see on bold that I was able to connect to my MongoDB connection. Please do not do this one. I did it just as this is a hello world, because I'm splitting this the connection string. That you do that, that means your connection string will be in while, and people are going to bring down your database. Please never ever do this. I'm doing it only for the demonstration purpose. Okay. And once I'm not able to connect it, I am spitting this error message chalk.red.bold that I was not able to connect the host name. I am spitting it over here. That's the red one. So if I go back and fix this, so I do come back over here, and now see this, within a fraction of second it was able to connect. Please do not ever do this. I'm doing it. I'm really sorry, but please do not do this one. I'm splitting this connection string, and it has come here. And that's, I mean, I'm just highlighting few of those points. And if you I just want to show one more point. Let me go and just one more small improvisation I did from my previous this thing. Let me go and select this one. This was part of my mean stack demonstration, which I did last year, I assume. I don't remember exactly. So if you see this, if you see this one, at all the places we did this require. And here also you see this, all the places we have require. And one small improvisation over that is, this time I'm doing the import. And one catch over there is, if you I tagged this one as a module. And when you do a module, you have to please be very careful when you are using that libraries which is coming, framework libraries. You have to specify, like, import the particular item from the library. It's going to recognize. But if it is the file which we have written, let's assume we come back to this router, and router was written by me, and I exported this export default router. And that's what I'm saying, that import book router. That's what I exported it here, book router from this one. And if you want to do this and go ahead and save this without the JS file, it's going to crash. It says that it's not it's unable to find it. So that's one particular tip. So if you want to use import and make this as a module, the type as a module, and ensure that all the classes which you write, you can do import from that particular class. Ensure that you are having this JS extension. That's one particular where am I in app file, so that app.js, we can come and see the differentiation. If you see this, express is being like this, constant require, but I did import express, and here everything was required, the Morgan logger or the book router. So I did it using the import here. That's one small improvisation over that. And the next important thing is this course. I have made it wide open, but we should never do that. Please ensure that you are doing very least privileges, had only the host which we should allow, and only the methods which we should allow. Do not ever open it for wide. I just did just for the demonstration purpose. Okay. And in the previous version, I have used the same one. Some people will use body parser. Now Express, they themselves are providing this out of the box, so we can use this one. Previously we use this body parsers to parse the body. Okay, that's one particular thing. And coming back to the server, I'm giving the high level tips without wasting much of the time. So the other thing is, this we have already covered. And okay, the other thing is, how are we using that env file, .env file? So you can drop the env file at the top level, and you can use it. At the time, you don't need to go ahead and specify the path. But I want to highlight that from my, yeah, you can do directly like that. You can say specify require or import whatever it is /env/config. That itself will take care. Now, if you are storing this env file somewhere in the folder structure, please ensure that you are giving the full path of that. So I said path.resolve process cwd current working directory, and then backend/config.env. So that's when it's going to pick up the configuration whatever we have specified here. And you don't give that, you have to struggle for a couple of hours, or you might crack it in a minute or two. But I spent a couple of hours breaking my head and scratching my head. Even though I don't have ears, I had to scratch my head to figure it out if I stored it in a different location. That's one tip. And other tip which we have already seen, that if I'm not able to connect, I am exiting the process, because I don't want to go ahead, and because we can't do anything if I'm not able to connect to the data store. There is no point in we going and trying something. Okay, cool. So that's one thing. And other thing is, we have to focus on this models real quick. And we are using this mongoose, and have this picture, url, title, author, some basic types. And this one is schema validator. So in the previous version, I have used joy, happy joy. You can come and see that models, the schema validator. I have used this happy joy. So if you try to go ahead and search this happy joy, so they themselves will specify that this has been deprecated. So even if you go to this npm of this happy joy, so they specify that happy joy has been deprecated, move to this joy. So that's a joy validator. So all we have to do is, from the schema, whatever you want to verify, if we are not specifying these things, it has to break. So difference which I saw, where am I? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So one particular difference which I faced problem yesterday is, like, if we use this JavaScript, we will have a habit of using the number as a lowercase n. If you see this book schema, here the number is lowercase. But here in this mongoose schema, if you go to this mongoose schema, if you go to this mongoose schema, I want to show you the data types, where it has got uppercase. So the schema types, if you see that, the schema type is uppercase n. So it's not a lowercase n. Just be careful if you want to do, if you're using this one, just ensure that there is an uppercase n. That's another tip. And have couple of middlewares, one for this one for this logger. So this is Morgan Logger. I really like this guy. They give all beautiful logging. What was the endpoint? I mean, it's like we can customize. I just kept it to the pretty simple thing, but we can customize as much as we want here. Okay. And the controllers are pretty much simple controllers. You can see that, like get all books. We're just going await book, the book model dot find, so it's going to find everything. We have seen that we did it here from the console in the MongoDB. Okay, now how do we add book? There are small mini validations, not such a big one. We are first doing a basic validator. Whatever is the required parameters, if we don't specify, it's going to throw an error. And a similar book, if it is existing, then it says that similar book already exists. In both the things, we are specifying 400, and once it is there, we are creating it. Okay, I think we are covered pretty much thing. I can go and check this. See, we have all these things. It has come out. So we have four. Just wanted to check that. Do we have 4 rows or anything more? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have five rows. So I think it should be five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I counted it wrong. I'm really sorry for that. Okay, so this is George Reddy's. This thing is here. So I want to go and capture this, and we'll see that post we will see in a moment. So we'll do the send. So you got that George Reddy's details. It shows that the book is active. And one more tip over here is, just wanted to keep it simple. Today uh, I'm testing with the local host, and tomorrow the URL might change. I might run on a different port number, even though it is local. I might run on different port. So all we can do is we can go ahead and create an environment, and inside that environment we can go ahead and create a variable and host it here. Because the advantage is at this point of time, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 endpoints. In real time, we might have a minimum 20 to 25 or more than 50 endpoints we have. And every time I can't go and change the port in all 25 different uh, tabs. It will be a painful thing. So all I can do is I can pretty much come over here and change this at one instance. Please, if you're using this, this is one of the other tips which we can go ahead and do that. So we have got this George record. So I can come back over here in the put. I am going here, and I want to send this, see if it is working. If not, I will send all the other parameters. I did false. Then I can come back over here and come here. A small, right now you can see this, the George book is disabled right now. Okay, so that's a small thing, and we can go ahead and delete any of those rows we can specify. Okay, that's pretty much. We can come back to the I'm just seeing, did I miss anything? Okay. Okay, these are the methods which we have it here, and the entire source code, whatever I'm showing here, will be available inside this folder, Speaker Series 2021, and inside that you will be seeing a folder called 11th June 2021 underscore bookstore underscore MERN, and here you will have both the back end and front end, except even that example, whatever the config which I've specified, example.env, even that will be pointing to your local host. If you have the local instance of the Mongo installed on your laptop, or you have the Docker container, you're covered. If you're using the Atlas, Mongo Atlas, or you have some other Mongo instance, ensure that you're changing. And all we have to do is just do an npm install, and you're good to go. Everything is in that way. It's all covered, right? So we'll see. Come back over here, and a small middleware kind of thing, because um, the endpoints, if you see the endpoints like get book by id, or update book, or delete book, those all things are the same route, like book/book id. And you have to go ahead and search this book for every functionality, all these three functionalities, the first piece is the book should exist in the system before you go and either retrieve it or delete it or update it. So that's a pretty much. So even though it's a one or two lines, but still moved it to a reusable method, and moved it to a reusable method, and so that we'll be able to we will be able to use it. I'll come back to that one. And before that, I was able to I want to show that, see this, the specifying that it's been deprecated, please start using this joy. So that's one important point. And this one is async express async handler. I think it's going to take some time to for that one. Let's take PM. Okay, so it took little time. I didn't have that much patience. I'm sorry for that. So this one, a simple middleware for handling exceptions inside the async express routes and passing them to your express error handlers. So that's this one. So how do we use it is, whatever our async method is there, that method we have to wrap it inside this async handler. So if you want to compare how our methods were there previously, and if I come in over here, so we can see that this was an async method. And let me take the get all books. So that's very simple. So it's just one line. So we have this one line. So we had this async function. Now if you see that, compare with this latest version, get all books, you have the same functionality. See, there's the same functionality, whatever you have it there, get all books, the request and response, and you're throwing this one line, exactly the same one line. All we have to do is this, wrap it, and any of those exceptions will get routed to this middleware over here. So error handler, so it properly does that. So we're using that one. And another tip, what about this one. So it doesn't make sense to every time go and check that. So if you see this get book by ID, it's pretty lean. It's just one line, because we are using this as part of the middleware. Every time you go with those endpoints where it depends upon the ID, parameter ID which you pass, it's one of the way to handle. There might be better ways, but this is what I have learned from others. So I'm just passing on to others. So if it is helpful, we can definitely use it. And update is again the simple thing. We use the same middleware to find if the record exists, then it comes as part of the body. And the delete is also pretty much the same. You use the same one. So here we are exporting these all methods. And coming back to the router, coming back to the routes, you can see that it's a pretty much very lean router. You don't have any flush inside this. It just creates express, and we are creating that book router. And we have imported all the methods, the 7 methods, 6 technically, 6 methods we have imported. And the first one, does book exist, that we are hooking it to the middleware. So any route which it finds the book ID, so it goes and executes, does this book exist on this particular ID? If it, then go to the next step. Else it throws from there itself. You can see that in the controller. Let's see that here it goes and tries to find that if at all the book doesn't exist. So I mean, if it is any problem, we are throwing this finder. And if this book exists, then we are calling the next. That means go to the next next handler. And if not, we're throwing 404. So that's the one. And final piece is, it's all pretty lean. So on this endpoint, where without, I mean, for this books, for these two verbs, whether it is books or whether it is get books or post books, so in that there are nothing coming as part of the route parameter. So in that we are calling this get all books get by ID. And anything like get book by ID or update book by ID or delete book by ID, where we have this ID parameter coming in all these 3 endpoints. So 3 endpoints are there, and by default it's going to take care of, the middleware is going to run in these 3 requests specifically, and it's going to handle. That's pretty much about the backend. And we have seen a couple of backends there, backend calls there. and let's come back to the front end. So this front end is pretty simple. Is it executing? Yes, it's running. Okay, so the front end, I didn't use much of the React Bootstrap or anything, including the kept it like Redux or any of those things. Kept it to the pretty simple to showcase that how quickly we'll be able to create the uh, CRUD operations in this MERN stack. So we have covered about the Mongo, we covered about Express and Node.js, and we have seen few tips and tricks. What I felt was helpful, I just passed it off. And what we are using is one thing is we are using this React router, and this is the one which I'm using. Okay, so we are using that and React Spinner as well as React Toastify. So to show some toasts on this one. So let me terminate this so that we'll be able to see those things at this point of time. I'll terminate this. Okay, let's spend some time before we go and discuss that one. Anything to focus here? No, nothing to focus over there. And these are the simple things which it comes out of the box. Nothing new. Okay, so nothing new here. So those are the frameworks, and let's come back to this public folder. And inside this public folder, you can see this. We are using the we are using this one and the font awesome, the CDN. So all those icons we see this, it's coming from this. It's coming from that font icon. So we have this root. The div root is here. So that one, and inside this public, I have few images. One is this loader and few books I just hard coded. So it dynamically generates a random number between 1 and 10, and it anytime we add a new book, it just adds that one, the random number, and it generates. So that's the one. And here, if we come back to the app, here you can see this component where one second. Yeah, this is the first component where we go ahead and get this app, and we are dropping it here in the router, and we are specifying this document dot get element by id root. So root, we have already seen that in the index.html where div is root. So that one, and the next thing what is happening over here is in this index file, we are telling that here is the first element, and take that element, and where you have to load that, you have to load it in this we have to load it in this container. So this is the element, the first piece is the element, and the second piece is a container. So that's one thing. And one more thing is whatever the bootstrap which we do have, that's what I forgot, or did I remove that? I'm really sorry, because we should see that as part of the BOT. 1 second, I'm really sorry, guys. Yeah, Bootstrap, it's been installed. I don't know, for some reason I could not see that the Bootstrap is there, because without Bootstrap I can't do the styling. I'm really sorry for that. For some reason, it's there. I'm really sorry. Yeah, the Bootstrap is also important. The Bootstrap I have included here, and if you see the font, it's being used from the CDN. Okay, those are the two important pieces. I can't help myself without those two things. Now we know that how these things are getting hooked up. So it in the HTML file, we do have this, the container or the div, and where we are going to load everything. And here we have the font awesome. Okay, let's go to the next step in the process. So here we have this app, and this app is loading the top nav bar, and it has got the footer, and it has got this div, and here is the toaster, and then we are having the sticky sidebar. You can see this over here, the sticky sidebar, 15% of that. So 2 columns, and the 10 columns. I have the 12 columns I divided into 2 comma 10. And here is this switch where we go and route it to different things. So it's all everything is coming in play because of this styles which is there inside this one. Okay, so let's quickly start and start breaking the application, and then let's start understand how. So I'm starting the server, and let me start. I'm starting the one because if you see this one, I mean, it's not needed that you should use the same structure, but I'm going to check in this structure. So what is happening here is in this package, if you start, it starts the node. From here, I'm going to the backend. I'm starting the server JS, and if you specify npm, if you specify this piece where I can go back and see that. So npm run server, that means it is coming and hitting this line number 9 where it starts the node mon, and instead of node we are starting with the node mon. Nothing special. It's a pretty simple. So we have connected, and here it's going to build that. Okay, while it is building, let's go ahead and build up some other theory. How did we organize this? So under I mean, it's all the best practices which you will be using might be entirely different from what I'm using it. It might not be the best practice. It might be my personal choice. Okay, so under the layout, I'm marking it the footer, sidebar, and the top navbar. We can have our own component specific css, but I made it like a server of Nivarni, put all these style sheets in one place. But you guys can follow the best practice and go ahead and have separate styles for each and every component. Okay, so what do we have here? We are using this router, and we heavily used this icons and the bootstrap functionality. And by default, the default props is there and the prop type. And you can see that this one link which says a bookstore, that's going to the dashboard, and list books and about pages. So again, if you come to this pages, created this home and about is just a small page which shows that, and home page is like a just like a dashboard to create what all the facilities which are available in the application. It's only for those pieces. If you come and see that, these are the two things. Like if I come to home page, it's just this one. And if you navigate to the dashboard, it's just like a couple of widgets, and each of this widget generally it's not the application dashboard, it's like a landing page. Let me rephrase that. It's not a admin dashboard or something where we will show that how many books are there in the stock, or what all the purchases which has happened over last 1 week, or those kind of graphs and other things which comes. That is an entirely different dashboard. Let me call this as a landing page. It's just a landing page when once you go and hit this one. Okay, so here we have this switch case where if it comes to the route, we show this, and if it goes to about it, we are coming in here and showing this one. Okay, now I can show this. There was a small spinner. You can see this just for a fraction of second. You can see that there was a spinner. I will, because we are already running that, so that might be the reason we could not see that for a longer time. Let me go ahead and stop this. I think that the first hit it might take. Again, I'm starting it. And
Swami, maybe you like to wrap in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
yeah, sure. So we have seen that flickering. And another tip in the list page. Okay, another tip is the way I organized is like a screens, where I mean under the screens, if you have different modules, we can have books and push all these 4 inside that books and service. And again in the service, I used fetch. And if you go ahead and do a comparison, whether to use Axios or whether to use Fetch, the Fetch, I mean, the Axios has got more facilities than Fetch. So you can see that we can do the canceling, and we can have interceptors and a lot of other things. And if you see that the data which is coming in this and the body, these are some of the differentiation and inbuilt protection from cross-site request forgery. Here it doesn't, but my use case was pretty simple, just do a CRUD operation. So I was sticking to this one. I'm not doing any of those facilities. I'm not using it. I just was sticking to this one. Okay, so that's pretty simple. So if you see that fetch, I have the URL, and I'm doing the post and doing this. Assigning this value. I mean, I'm doing the stringify of this book, taking out all those properties, and these all simple operations. And you can see, let's go through the list one real quick and see this one. We have the use state, one for the books and one for the loading. So that's what we are seeing over here. If you go and go back to some other place and come over here, you can see that the loading symbol, as long the loading is there, we are showing this clock loader. This is one of the excellent thing. You have got hundreds of loaders, and I selected this is the bare minimum I have selected. There are hundreds and hundreds of designs. Okay, so that's one thing. And this table, we already know that until this loading, this will be hidden. If it is false, we'll show this one. And here books.map is coming in here. One thing which I wanted to highlight here is the a rounded circle, where this one and a little bit of shadow on top of this, and this is the picture URL which is coming as part of the API call. And this is another if condition we are using. If the book is active, we are showing the green thumbs up, and book is deactivated, we are showing the red thumbs up. And it's all pretty much an icon without much of a textual label. Like everything, it shows that edit book or a delete book, and we can pretty much go and come back here without harming anything, or we can go and delete that particular row. It shows a small toaster. So a small application which needs all the facilities, like you can do add, update, and something. Manpreet Singh, let me add his row. I can see this Manpreet's record has been created. It's a small. I mean, these are dynamically generated, this random numbers, and that's it. So this was the demo from my side. I'm going to check in the entire source code, including the server as well as the client. So please feel free to grab it from. I think Stephen will uh, post it in the YouTube channel,
Yeah,
the GitHub link.
yeah,
Please feel
exactly.
free
I
to
have
grab it.
actually
And
Yeah, I have actually dropped your GitHub link in the GitHub URL in the comments. Definitely, people can pick up from there. Great session, Swami. Maybe I know we're running a little over time now, so people really like your session. I see Hemant saying, uh, "Thanks, thanks, Shapon. Thank you, sir. This session cleared my many doubts. So thanks for joining
thank
in,
you.
Herman." Pratima says a great session. So thank you so much. Let's take one question from Gunjan. Gunjan says, "What would be the best
Mm.
place to store DB credentials while on MERN stack to ensure security slash confidentiality in just 30 seconds?"
Oh, okay. Like this env file, once you deploy it to the server, if you see in Azure, where I frequently deploy, where we have this configuration settings. So we deploy it with the dev credentials, and then store the credentials in the Azure Key Vault, and then get the credentials from the Azure Key Vault. While you are deploying through the release pipeline, go ahead and replace the tokens there. So while you're having in the source code, you're not going to store anywhere, and the only thing is while you're deploying through the release pipeline, and the service prince will go and get this from the key vault and do a token replacement, and you deploy it to the server. And the Azure key vault is a thing which no one in this face of earth will get the access to that resource except the infrastructure lead and the architect or senior architect. They are not going to give it to the senior architect also, because that's where the
Okay.
credentials are stored. It's like the
All right.
keys of the kingdom. I'm not willing to give it to
Makes
anyone,
sense.
isn't
Okay,
it?
let's take one more question, then we'll move to next
Yes, sir.
session. It's by
Mhm.
Asari Naidu, who says, how can we manage MongoDB port and how to increase memory for that image?
Wow, this is pretty good question. So if you see the YAML templates, I mean, whether it is a Docker Compose or the Kubernetes, when you're composing this containerization, that's where you specify that how much memory or how much RAM you can use it. So you have to quickly specify those things one and deploy it. And we have this Kibana and Grafana. These dashboards are there. You can check this elk stack. So even though we specify that we need 500 MB or 750 MB, so we have to constantly monitor those dashboards to see that the usage. We cannot consider the happy day scenario. Happy day
Yeah.
scenario is I'm the only user, I can go ahead and use it. Once we drop it to the test or QA environment and do a one round of production, the performance testing, and then monitor the graph, how the memory or CPU, how it is chewing, and based on that whether you have to increase or decrease. But net, whether you are doing the YAML templates, you have to specify the RAM or CPU, because that's
All
that's
right,
the
Swami.
difference where. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so that's where the difference between the virtual machine and the Docker container is coming. So when you have a virtualization and you create a virtual machine and you deploy 2 or 4 applications. I'm taking an example of IIS, and inside that IIS, Steven has written a website. It is there, web API, and I've written a web API using crap code. And Steven's code is pretty good. And what's happening is, because of my dirty code, the users, when they are coming and hitting, my web API is chewing up the memory. So because of my application, Steven's web API will get impacted. His users are getting impacted. So there is no control. But when you
Yeah.
come to the containers, we can exactly specify that what is this containers max. We can cap it. So I'm going to use this much CPU and you're going to use this much RAM. That's it. So we have to go and observe the dashboard through the monitor and alerts and monitoring system, and then come back and tweak it. So we are
All
safe.
right.
We are covered over there.
All right, Gary Swami. Thanks, and that was a great session, definitely, right? Full packed with demos. I know you never covered any slides, and it's
I
worth
don't.
it because you
Yeah.
share so much of code.
Yeah.
Any final thing you want to say before we move to our next session?
Yeah, please feel free to ping me. And I'm a learner,
Yeah.
so definitely I'll do a lot of mistakes. But please feel free to correct me. Always feel like I have to learn more. So I'll be more than happy to learn from anyone and everyone. So thank you
All
so
right,
much.
Swami.
Hope you guys
It's
have
always
enjoyed.
exciting. Yeah, it's always exciting to host you. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend ahead, and yeah, see you in the next conference. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
All right. Right, with that, I know we are running a little 5 minutes over time now, but as I promised, we're gonna do a giveaway now, and we're just gonna take 30 seconds. So as I have been telling that, please go ahead and drop your every time you comment. So definitely use React C# corner in the comments. So we're gonna be and already have 13 entries. So at the count of 5, we are going to do a lucky draw, and let's see who wins. Let's first, what are we going to give away? Let's say. We're gonna give away a C# Corner swag pack, like everything that we have at C# Corner, t-shirts, cap, slippers, everything that we have, right? We're gonna give it away. So it's gonna be the count of 5, 0. Okay, how do we do it, Kamal? It's like from the beginning of towards the end. Never mind. 5. All right, let's do it. Let's hit it. Do-do-do-do-do. Who wins it? Who wins it? Who wins it? Mhm. Did Oh my god. Rohit Tamar, you are already a team member, right? So you're a native. Rohit, you already have a swag pack. You are a team member, so let's do a draw again. Oh my goodness. Rohit just wished if it was an Amazon gift card. All right, who is it next? Who is next? All right, Arjun La, congratulations, Arjun La. You win a complete Shisha Corner swag pack. Please reach out to me at Code with Simon on Twitter. That's my handle, right? So just reach out to me over here. Okay, it's over here. Just reach out to me at Code with Simon at Twitter, and we'll make sure that we ship you your free C Sharp Corner swag packs. And having said that, I am really excited for our next session. The next session is going to be about useful NPM React libraries in SPFx. The next speaker is a Microsoft MVP. I'm hosting him for the very first time. It's so bizarre that I'm hosting him for the first time, but he has been so active in the community. He's an amazing community leader from Mumbai Pune region. So without any further ado, let's go and invite Siddharth joining us all the way from Pune, India. Hi Siddharth, welcome to the React Virtual Conference.
Hey Simon, how are you?
I'm doing great. And what's up with your background? I love it.
Oh,
I
you
love
know
all
what I did, right?
that's behind the scenes. All right, Siddharth, how have you been? How's life during this pandemic? And as I did, Sam was seeing for the very first time, but I see
Yeah.
you're very, very active in the community. How has your this pandemic been?
It's okay. I got a chance to stay at my hometown for around 7 months, but now
Wow.
I'm back to Pune from last 2 3 months. And for maybe for people in IT, I don't think it is that much difference has been made because we are still working. We can still work from home and everything. So yeah, pretty much good and everything. And thanks for that video. I never knew you take everything from the social media, and that was nice introduction.
Thanks to Rohit that who does this, and thanks to you. You're branded today. You're wearing a C sharp corner t-shirt. So
Yes, I
thanks for
just
coming.
received it last week. Yeah.
Oh, all right, good. So that I know we're only 10 minutes in your session, so we won't take much of your time. Feel free to go ahead and share your screen, and then I'll add it to the stream.
Sure, just a moment.
And everyone who is definitely watching us, feel free to go ahead and drop your comments portion in the comments. See that I see your slides now. Once you okay, I'm gonna add it to the stream. Everyone can see it. Okay, this is another mode. Yep.
Yeah, I
Uh,
will change that.
all right. Yeah, that's the one. So, all right. So that next 45 minutes is all yours.
Thanks. Hey, welcome everyone to React Virtual Conference. The last session was very informative. I was really into, like rather than preparing myself, I was getting into seeing details of what the how the program was being written. So thanks for that, and thanks for joining us again. Yeah, a little bit of introduction myself. I think Simon has already played the video, so you already know. But just to conclude, these are some of my social handles through which if you want to connect with me. Okay, so today's session is about useful npm React libraries in SPFx, right? So let's start with npm. Okay, I'll just take maybe a quick couple of minutes to see what npm is about. So most of us would already know it is basically world's largest software registry. It's an open source, and most of the packages which are available in the npm are free. When I say most of this is, I mean there are many which are free. There are some paid also, but still many of the free ones are the one which are very much useful. It is a library to share and borrow packages. Okay, and the npm consists of basically three components like the website, the command line interface, and the registry. So the website is the one from where we can basically go and search for the packages which are available. And then there is a command line interface which works as a part of our Node.js installation, through which we can install the npm packages using npm install. And then there is the registry, which is basically the database where all the packages which are been available freely are hosted somewhere at a particular server, and from where it gets downloaded to our local machine, right? So so that's about npm. And now the second thing is we are here for React, right? So what is React basically? It is a JavaScript library, as we all know. It is kind of it is a front end framework, okay? And it is programmably very simple, and it performs very better. The reason being the architecture behind the library which has been created. What it does is basically it creates a virtual DOM in our actual DOM. And what it does is any changes which we want to make, it first makes to the virtual DOM, okay, and doesn't reload the whole actual DOM, HTML DOM, and which makes it very faster than the regular DOM object. So there would be people who would be using jQueries and everything, and we know that to change something on the UI, what we do is we basically find that particular DOM element using jQuery and using IDs or maybe CSS class name, and then we basically change the DOM the way we wanted to do it, okay? And React make it organized, it's structured, and it also, kind of, it's a one-way reactive data flow. It means that once we create states along with the classes which we create, and once we change the state, it automatically would re-render the DOM, and it will send the updated HTML content to the user, right? And we can consider React as a V in our MVC. So if anybody who follows MVC pattern like model view controller, so we can use V as a React as a view in that particular design pattern, right? Moving ahead, SharePoint framework, okay. This might be new to some of the people who are not from the SharePoint background, but just to give a background on what this framework is about. This is how we basically do the modern client-side development on or customization on the SharePoint, right? And it is very lightweight, and it is backward compatible. It means the web part which we develop works with the classic experience also. And it is again open source, and it supports all the basic JavaScript frameworks which we have, right? And on top of it, we can use graph APIs, LOB system cloud services. Like for example, if you have your own APIs which you can call and which you can create an web part and which you can deploy it into a SharePoint page. These are just the open source tooling in the SharePoint framework, okay? I wanted to just quickly highlight this because it supports all the modern open source tooling, right? For the build process, it supports Yeoman, Gulp, Node.js, and npm. So which is why we are here for today. System.js, Webpack, Sass, and TypeScript, okay? In the web framework, it supports React, okay, which again, which would be would be the focus of our session today. Angular, Knockout, jQuery, and any other front-end frameworks which you can have that you can use into SharePoint framework. And these are some of the code editors like Visual Studio Code, Atom, through which you can develop your SharePoint framework. I won't be going much detail into this, but considering though the session title says using npm library in SPFx, it not necessarily means that you can only use these libraries in SPFx, okay? Because this is open source and this is on the npm package manager, all the libraries can be used in any React based application where you are using it as a front end, okay? And what I have focused is I have focused on mostly the libraries which are kind of allow us to build a user interface, so that for example, we don't have to create that particular component from the scratch, and we can reuse it what is available from in the npm package, okay? This is just a server tool side comparison for SPFx. Like in previously we were developing using IIS and .NET. Now we have Node.js. We were having NuGet. Now we have npm. Previously we was having MS Build. Now we are using Gulp. And we were coding in C#. Now we can code in TypeScript. And there were Visual Studio project templates. Now we can use Visual Studio Code and Yeoman generator to create different types of solutions. Okay, now why this topic, right? Okay, so the idea behind this topic is to get to know the useful packages which are available readily as a part of open source, okay, and which we can use in our React based application, right? Which will save time, like developing everything from the scratch. Okay, why do we want to reinvent the wheel if something is already available? Okay, so we can focus on our business logic, okay, and also kind of support the community by using it, and if you have any feedback you can share with the developer and they might be able to kind of fix it also. And if something you think might be a component which you might have developed as a part of your projects and which you think can be added to npm package, certainly you can do that, so you can be part of that community also, right? So moving ahead, general usage of any npm package, right? I just wanted to quick highlight it, so for the people who might be new to this topic or anything, what happens is any package which we have, we install it, right? Then we import it in the component file, then we add that component to the render method so that the we can use that component in the ux, right? And we set the properties for the configuration. So there might be different configurations properties which would be available as a part of that particular package, which we can use and which we can basically customize it the way the developer has intended us to do, right? Moving ahead, let's start with the components, right? First of all, I would like to explain react tab. Okay, this any application which we have, okay, one way or another there would be an business case where we might have to create tabs, right? Okay, and what if you want to what if you want to create it and in a react based application? So this is one of the library which I have found which is very useful and easy implementation, right? There are certain features like it is mobile friendly, so you don't need to worry about creating running that particular tab into mobile. It will automatically basically it will automatically render based on the what the screens look like. And there are 4 different components within the react tab. One would be tabs, tab list, tab, and tab panel. Okay, I'll explain this once I'll walk through the code. And the other feature is there is custom styling. So it doesn't mean that what you see on the right hand side, the screenshot is there, that's what you have to use, right? You always have an option to basically customize the look and feel of the tab which is looking. You can change the colors, you can change the background colors, hover colors, and everything, and everything is possible, right? And another important feature which I would like to highlight is the on select event handler. Why I think is this is very useful. For example, if we are creating a dashboard wherein we are displaying, for example, uh, different views like my request and all request and my approval, my pending task, for example. Okay, why do we want to load all the data at once when the page loads, right? What we wanted to do is we wanted to load when the user clicks on it, right? So in this case, what we can do is basically we can use this on select event handler, and on click of the tab we can actually get the data and then bind it rather than binding it on the page load. Okay, so this is the first component which I would like to highlight, and what I would like to do is basically show you how this component can be used in a SPFx web part. But as I said, because SPFx is again supporting all the open source tooling, okay, it is merely like using the same thing in the React application also. Okay, so going to the code, first let me show you how the tabs looks like. Okay, so if you see, this is a SharePoint framework local workbench from where we can add the web part, and this is the web part which I have created, which is specifically tab web part. And these are the tabs which we have created. Like, I just wanted to highlight that we can have sub tab within a tab. Like, for example, the Simpson is one tab, and within that there are different tabs, sub tabs which we have created and which works pretty much the way way we have added the data to, right? And then there is a second tab, and the second tab also can have its sub tabs, right? So this is pretty easy to implement in a way wherein as a part of my web part, what I will get a component. Okay, so anybody who is familiar with React would know that this is basically a React component itself. Okay, and where we have render method, right? And any React component which you do always would have a render method. That is where we would be writing our HTML to build the UI.
Siddharth, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you just zoom it? Yeah, that people
Sure.
have. Just Control plus plus helps.
Yeah, this will help. Yep.
Yeah, if you can move, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. No problem. Okay, so if you see here in the render method, the first component is tab, right? And then we have a tab list which we use, and wherein we mention two main tabs which are there on the top, like the Simpsons and Faturma. And then there are tab panels. So ideally, there is no association as such, like wherein we can say that this tab panel content goes to this tab. So what it does is it basically is based on the index. So the 0th index is the Simpsons, and wherein there would be two tab panels for each of the tab which we have, right? So for both the tabs we have tab panel, and within the first tab panel again we are creating a new tab because we wanted to create sub tabs within each, right? And these are the tab list with are the sub tabs within each. Okay, and then within that tab list we are having the tab panel where we are actually putting the content like paragraph and the image and anything. So consider your content goes here, okay, within your tab panel. It can, in my example, it is a again I'm creating a tabs, but it can be any content, any React component, or any HTML which you would like to do. Okay, so this is about tab component, and this is the link, okay, which you can use and basically go and see what are the different customization options which you have. Like for example, if I just okay, so this is the documentation of the React tab. Okay, and if you see, what we do is we first install it, okay, using npm install command. Okay, and then the basic example says you import it first. What are the components you wanted to install? You install it first, and then what you do is, just a moment, Simon. Yeah, my kids are here. Okay, so this is how you basically import it. Okay, and then these are the best examples on how do you use the tabs, right, the way I have shown. And then these are the different APIs which are available. Okay, like example, the different customization or the options which you see. So basically this would be the general idea of any npm package which we will use, right? What we do is we follow the documentation. The documentation would have different ways of how do we customize and use that particular npm package. And then if there are, the good thing about an open source technology again is, like if you go to the GitHub, there would be issue list where you can actually raise an issue, and if the developer is active in maintaining that particular repo, they would be able to solve it also. Okay, so moving ahead, I'll go to second one. Okay, this is very interesting, React canvas signature, right? Now consider a scenario wherein you are building a form, and what you want to get is you wanted to get input from the user, and then you want them to basically sign it, right? In most of the case, this signature works with documents. Like there are commercial products available like DocuSigns and everything, where we can actually build a solution around creating e-signature within our document as a part of our business process, right? But they are paid. Okay, I'm not sure whether there are any freely available. There might be some, but there would be some limitation. Okay, but what if your use case is pretty simple, right? You wanted to just maybe create an travel request system, and just as a part of the audit policy, you want them to, once they raise a request, you want to just get the signature, right? And you can use this kind of this library as such, and you can get the signature on the web. Okay, and this canvas it would be an HTML based canvas. It will sign it, and you can use this and store it somewhere, so that you know that the signature has been been added by the user as a when they have fill up the form, right? So about features about this particular library, it is basically wrapper around JS library signature pad. Okay, so this is the actual npm library, but some other developer has created a wrapper so that it can be easily used in our React based project. It is HTML5 and canvas based. There are options to export signature to PNG, JPG, and SVG. So once we get this signature, right, what we can do is we can export it and we can save it in these 3 different formats. And there are options to load canvas from base 64. So when I say option to load canvas from base 64, why this is important? Considering an edit scenario, right? And once user has already filled the form, but you wanted them to for an approver or for themselves to see the edit or view what data they have entered, right? So in that case, the signature is already stored somewhere. What you wanted to do is you wanted to get the signature as a part of base 64 and provide it to the component, and the canvas would basically load the pre-filled signature. Okay, and then you also have to change the pen color. Like for example, you want black, red, or anything. Like there might be requirements wherein you ask signature particularly in black format or in red format or in blue format, blue color for example. So that can be used, right? So let's see a quick demo of how this works. So what I did is to show all other components, right, which we are going to see in the session here. I have created a main web part, which would be basically a tab web part, and then all the components are loaded as a part of tab, right? So just to make sure that I wanted to highlight the idea wherein that it's not that we can use individual React libraries individual only. What we can do is we can club different libraries and components which are there, and we can build a solution around it, so that each components individually will work on its own, plus it can be work combined as a solution, right? So if you see here, I have created tabs, which is the tab component which I have used, and then I have created 6 tabs for each of the components which we are going to check next, and each of the component is loaded as a part of tab panel. Right, so let me show you a quick example of how signature works here. Like for example, if I say take this signature, it would be loaded, and once I click on trim, what it does is it will remove the extra space which we have, and it will give us a base 64 image. And what I'm doing, I'm using that base 64 image and just displaying it here. Okay, now this can be extended by wherein using this base 64 we can save it in the database, in a SharePoint list, in a document library, or maybe in a custom database based on your requirement, wherever you wanted to do, right? How do we use this? So if we see, the usage is pretty simple here. Again, I'll open the signature component file. Okay, in the render method, first thing is we would be importing the library where we wanted to use it, right? And then we would be using this particular format, signature canvas. We are specifying the plain color to red. We are specifying the background color, and we are specifying the canvas property to 300, 200, and the class name. Okay, now all these properties which we are passing, right, that can be found in the documentation itself. So we don't need to worry about like how do I remember everything. What you need to do is you just need to go to the documentation of a particular library, see what are the options available, and something might fit your requirement, what you wanted to do, right? And for this particular case, what I'm doing, as I said, once we click on trim, right? Okay, I'm calling this method trim, and there is a method which is available as a part of our library which says get trimmed canvas, and which says to data URL. It means we specify in which format you want the image to be. In this case, it is PNG, and we are just setting the state to the base 64 to this particular state object, trim data URL, and then the trim data URL is being rendered as a part of our image tag. So that's just rendering it in the UI. Correct. So this is pretty much about the signature component. Okay, again, as I said, there are different options which are available, which we can go and see into the documentation and see what all things are possible and what all things we can do with this particular library. So I find it very interesting, and maybe free solution for something wherein I have really implemented it for a couple of customers where they wanted them to basically get the signature, so that the user who is actually requesting would feel that actually I'm signing into something rather than just submitting the data as a part of my request, like travel request or expense request or something which we are doing, right? Okay, so moving on, the third one, custom scroll bar. Okay, so again, I feel like why this is important, like nowadays, we know that every website would have a landing page, right? And the landing page would have too many contents which we will be using. Like in a single page application, there will be too many contents, right? Now what would happen is, if you are developing a full web page and you want a particular paragraph or a particular content to be as a part of your page, but you don't want it to be using all the space, right? So what we want to do is we wanted to basically enable scroll within that particular component, right? So yeah, definitely there are by using custom css that is possible. Okay, it's that it not possible. The only thing is this one gives us a pretty good look and feel, plus it is kind of fully customizable, and it also supports mobile device. Sometimes what happens is, once you are doing something custom using css, you might also have to take care of how it will render in the mobile device and everything, right? So this gives basically an added advantage on by using this particular scroll bar. Okay, again, it is fully customizable. Okay, we can auto hide. It means it will only come when the content cross that particular height of the container of the HTML. There is no extra style sheet required, and it is well tested. Okay, and well been used some at many places, right? So let's see a quick demo of this. So if I click on scroll bar, if you see the second component which I have loaded as a part of tab, and this is how the scroll bar would looks like, right? So it's pretty good in terms of how the out of the box scroll bar looks like. Okay, and you consider, like, we creating this particular type of component at different pages in the part, and then can be basically used, the space can be utilized more efficiently, right? So yeah, so this is the scroll bar component. Let's quickly see how we can use this. So again, I have a scroll bar component here. I'll just minimize little bit, but this is pretty much very easy to use. First thing is you import it. Okay, and whatever content you wanted to kind of wrap around the scroll bar, you put it be inside the scroll bar component. Okay, and you specify the width and the height of the scroll bar. And once you do that, what will happen is any content which is within the scroll bar, okay, it can be paragraph, html, f form, or anything, it will basically wrap within that particular part of the section of the web page, right? So again, this is pretty much very simple to use, but I think it is very effective, like considering this kind of library is available and we can easily build it. Okay, I personally like this kind of libraries because I'm not more into css. I always fear like css is something which I cannot do it quickly. Okay, I would need some ui developers help. But if we have this kind of components, what we can at least do is independently, we as a backend developer also would be able to use these front-end libraries easily and build solutions effectively. Okay, moving ahead to third one, grid gallery. Okay, now this again is pretty much would be a basic requirement on displaying your images in the grid, right? And this can be for a website which is public facing website, where you are which is content driven website, or it might be also useful wherein you wanted to display basically different images which you are capturing as a part of your application, right? And what if you wanted to display this kind of gallery like this, right? And this is pretty cool in terms of what features it provides. Like for example, it is inspired by Google Photos. So if you can see that look and feel is more like Google Photos. And the good thing about is, depending on the actual height and the width of the image, okay, it actually kind of justifies itself. Like for example, this one is a vertical image, right? So it justifies and put it somewhere. The all other images are long enough. So this is pretty good in terms of, again, utilizing the space effectively within your web page, right? And then you have then with the select images are selectable. It means you can basically select the image. So if you see here the blue icon which says these are the selectable images, we can have custom overlay text. It means that once you hover over it, you can also display text on the image, right? Then you can also give thumbnail captions, okay? And again, it is mobile friendly. Okay, most of the libraries which we are seeing would be mobile friendly, because that's when the added advantages, right? We don't have to take care of everything from our own, right? And again, if we go to the documentation, I have mentioned this URL here. To save us time, I will not go through the documentation, but if you just know that this something similar exists, you can always go and Google it, and you can see how you can customize it, right? Let's see a quick demo. So this is the grid gallery. Okay, if you see, this is selectable. I might have made it non-selectable, but you can see ocean and people. It means that these are the overlay text which you can basically add as a part of your gallery also, right? In terms of implementation, I might be repetitive, but again, you import the actual component, okay, and you just create a gallery component. Okay, you see how easy this is. The only thing which you are giving is the array of the images, right? So you have to make sure that right now what I'm doing, I'm just putting 3 static images by assigning src, thumbnail, and the width and the height and everything, right? Now what you can do is basically you can also get this images from the database, create the required object, and just pass it to the gallery image, and it will it will take care of rendering it. Okay, moving ahead, next, React draft, what you see, what you get editor. Okay, now you might have, as a web developer or as a business application, we might have seen there are two there would be many requirements where we would be needing similar kind of HTML editor as a part of our solution, right? Now this again, there are pretty much many available. Okay, why I want to highlight this is because this is React based. It means it is easily for the React developers, it is easily available and also easily customizable, and it supports all the TypeScript based customization which we wanted to do. Okay, so if you see, these are the features. There is a long list of features. This is very popular again. Now if you like, for example, you can show and hide different controls which are available. Okay, and you can change the order of the controls. Like, for example, if you wanted to keep the bold, italic, underline at the last, because that might not be very much important to the user, you can always do that. And then you can also create custom control to the toolbar. So not only the out of the box controls which you see, like indentation, adding hyperlinks, the emojis, you can also create a custom control and then build something on top of it, right? Like, for example, if you wanted to get hyperlink and just add it here, then you can create a custom component which would be a pop-up kind of thing, build it, add to the user, and then put it in the editor itself, right? Then there are choices of 150 emojis. There are support for mentions, hashtag. There is support for uploading and adding images also. So pretty much all of the HTML editor features are available here. Okay, let's quickly see the demo again. So if you see here, this is the demo, right? And what you can do is you can add it. You can also use certain shortcut, like, for example, I use Control B to bold it, right? And then you can add hyperlink. You can give the link and the title, the title and the link. And you can also specify whether you want to open it in the new window or everything. So why would you need this? Like, for example, you are building a form and you want the end user to basically add data in the HTML, right? And being a SharePoint developer, I would know that this is useful many times, because what happens is there is a column type which is HTML, which is available in SharePoint, and where we are building custom forms, but we want user to basically use a rich text editor so that they can provide the formatted content, and then which we can use to display it wherever we need it. Okay, so again, let's see the usage. So this is draft. Okay. Again, very simple usage. The only thing is we are importing the actual component, and we are also importing the CSS. Okay. Some of the libraries would require you to import the CSS. The reason being, it might be not directly available. Okay. And or it might be directly clashing with the other ones if default you are not available, if you are not specifying it, right? And you just have to say editor, and you have to say wrapper class and everything. Okay. Now in terms of customization, how to read the HTML content and everything, if you go to the documentation, there are options like on blur, on focus, and everything, through which we would be able to get the content also, and which we can use as an HTML and store it somewhere in the database, right? And also there are options to pre-populate, like again the scenario wherein it's not just about adding the content, right? You might want to edit the content, edit form, you might want to create an edit form where you want to preload the HTML which is already there, so you just have to give it as an input. Okay. So this is the what you get editor, rich editor with the name React Draft, and again you can see refer it from the official documentation of the library. Okay, then accessible accordion. Okay, now I'm pretty sure this would be one of the basic requirement of getting accordion done, right? Okay, and there are lots of accordions available, I would say. Okay, why again I would highlight this is based on React. Okay, it means it can be easily used on the React based project. Okay, and the styling is customizable. It means we can customize the styling. There are options to basically choose whether we wanted to only allow single accordion to be expanded, or we wanted multiple to be expanded. Plus there are options to also to choose which particular accordion should be expand collapsed by default. Then there is on change event handle, which is again very important. As I said, until you have a specific content which is very less, and you are that should be okay. But what if you wanted to dynamically get data once the user clicks on it, right? Then pretty much this would be very much useful. There is an option to disable particular item also. If, for example, we can disable that this particular item cannot be expanded, for example, right? So I would always consider accordion maybe as an vertical tab also, right? Like it's not just about creating FAQs or something using accordion. You can also build a form which looks vertically, which would look like a tab, and on click of every tab on the right hand side you are specifically add loading different component, like for example create new form, or my request, or my pending task, etc., right? Then it also supports all the desktop and mobile browsers. So let's see implementation again. I know I'm running fast, but that was the idea. Okay, just to get used to all this library, and so that that this kind of components are available which can be readily used rather than building something from the scratch. Okay, so these are the three accordions, like what is SPFx, what is React. Okay, the header and the actual content, right? Now if I go to the implementation, I'll say go to accordion, right? I will import all the components which would be used. Okay, so how do you know that you have to use a specific format, right? Like for example, you start with accordion, then within accordion you need accordion item. All is available in the documentation. You just have to follow it, and you will understand what every component means. Like for example, here if you see, accordion is the base tag. Within accordion there is accordion item. It means there would be 3 accordion items for each of the accordion item which we have seen as a part of our demo. And then there is an accordion heading. Okay, wherein you have to specify accordion item button. Frankly, I'm not sure whether this would be required or directly we can put it, but as per the documentation they were mentioning that this accordion item button is there. Okay, and then there is accordion item panel, which is basically the content for that particular accordion. So now within this, again, as I said, you can have HTML, you can have a different React component, or you can use any other library components which is available. Okay, so possibilities are endless, right? Moving ahead, next, material table. Okay, again a very useful one. Okay, like for example, we have seen in the last session, right, that Swamy was using a tabular kind of format to display the books, right? And this is pretty much a requirement for every other projects, which if you are developing something, which is kind of getting data from the database, displaying and performing the CRUD operation exactly, right? So what happens for this kind of implementation, why do I choose this particular one? Because of the one feature which is available, and there are many available, like there is jQuery data table, there is Bootstrap data table, there is Fabric UI, Fluent UI data table, list view controls. There are many availables, okay? But this I wanted to highlight because there are different options here. Like for example, you can export to CSV and Excel. So by default, you can just click on the download button and it gives an option to CSV and Excel, and you don't need to program it, right? Then yeah, definitely again there might be argument that jQuery data tables also use this, okay? But if you are building something on React, right, you wanted to get something which is supported by React, right? So that is where the this particular library will come into picture. Then any data table which would have, there is a search functionality, there is sorting functionality, filtering, grouping, and we can choose detail panel also. Like for example, on click of it, the detail panel can be open, okay? Then you can have custom rendering of columns. So it gives us an option wherein you can actually customize the column rendering. Like for example, if the data which you are getting from the database, which would be an array, is just the name, but you wanted to format it before you actually want to render it, right? That is possible, that you can do it, right? And it is editable, which we will see. And then there is event handler for each action. It means that on click of edit, what you wanted to do, you can customize it. You on click of delete icon, what you want to do, you can customize it. You can write your own code to basically perform the actual CRUD operations as a part of it, okay? So moving on to see the demo. So this is how the data table looks like, okay? You can see pardon my CSS, as I said, I did not focus on the action part, but yeah, you can see that there are two actions available, like edit, delete. There is an action to edit. So once you click on edit, what happens is a new row gets created here. You can input the name here, right? And you can just say save, and it will add it to the row, right? It will add it to the last of the row because we have pagination, right? So if you see here, it has added, right? And again, as I said, right now everything is being done locally, right? Nothing is being stored in the database. But what you can do is, once you click on the tick mark, which was basically a save icon, you can actually store in the database and reload the data, okay? And that you can do. Then the good thing is it is editable, right? So it means there is an inline editing capability, and which I think is mostly many times it has been asked for by the user. Like we need a list view, but we don't want to basically have a different form where I go and edit it. If this is pretty much 5 to 6 columns which you are displaying in the grid, right, or the table, so you can always basically edit it, okay? And then you can save it. So this is pretty cool, okay, in terms of the editable grid which we have. And then there is search functionality. You can search it based on any columns which you want. You can download CSV or PDF. You can just export the data as a part of CSV PDF. Pagination functionality is available. So most of the list grid view functionality is available. And I would suggest, if you are exploring to build something custom, right, and if you wanted to give similar kind of functionality, this can be pretty useful, right? So let's say the implementation, okay? The implementation again here would be there would be little bit more to what we have used other libraries. First thing is you import it, okay? And as I said, this is based on the material UI, okay? So what as a part of material UI, we just get the table, okay, like list view and everything. So this particular developer, what he did is he used the material UI basic table, and he added some capabilities like editing and everything which we are seeing. So this is good thing about community, wherein people would if something is open source, people will use it, plus they would get an opportunity to extend it also, and then again it can be open sourced it, right? So considering how do you want to use it, you start with material table. You specify data, which would be the specific data which you wanted to do. In my case, I'm just using static data like name, surname, age, gender. And you specify column, and the column also should be kind of an array. wherein you tell what should be the title and what should be the field which it should map to the in the data. So this would be the header which we are seeing, right? Like name, surname, age, and gender. Okay, and this is the field which it says that once I provide the data array, okay, to this field you need to basically map it to. So the name would map it to the name field, the surname would map it to the surname field, and age would map it to the age field, like, right? And this is pretty useful, wherein there might be case wherein in the database or from where we are getting data, it might be having a different name, right? But we wanted to display a different header title, so this gives a flexibility over it, right? And then the icons, like table icons which we wanted to show. So it just says that when we say table icons, it means it say what all things you wanted to display, right? So this is pretty much from the documentation where you tell them that that you need an add icon, you need a checkbox icon, you need a clear icon, delete icon, detail pane icon. So all of this basically you are passing it, saying that all these options, I mean all these icons I needed as a part of my solution, right? And this is, again, as I said, we can check it from the documentation and use it. And in the options we specify whether we want export button, okay, and if it is true, then it will basically add that export to CSV and PDF, right? And this is interesting, okay. In editable property, okay, what you do is you specify three event handlers, like on row update, on row add, and row delete, okay. In our case, what we are doing is, once we get a new data, it means basically new data is nothing but just the data about the row. What it does is automatically take care of binding all the JSON objects attributes the way user has added to the grid, and it gives us that particular item, right? And then that item we can use it. So right now we are just setting the data in the state, okay, but what we can do is we can always save it in the database. We make an API call and actually save it, right? And same happens with row update, okay. What we wanted to do, we are getting first the actual index which is getting edited, and then we are updating the new properties or the updated values and setting the state again, okay. And on row delete, we are using splice to just remove it from the array content. But in real scenario, we might be making an actual API calls, first displaying maybe, for example, a pop-up window saying that do you really want to delete this, and then actually delete it, right? So yes, this were the few of the components. There might be n number of other components, and I would like to hear from the audience, if you think there is something which you already know which I have missed, please feel free to add in the comment, and I would really like to explore it. Because being an not a front-end developer, I really look forward to use this kind of UI libraries which are available, which we can easily use to build our solution, rather than depending on the UI developer to build something, okay. So moving ahead, references, these are some of the reference links which where from where I have used this, okay. This would be pretty SharePoint framework, the npm.js and the React.js and everything. And again, thank you. And if there is any question and answer, Simon, I would like to take, and hopefully I have completed in time.
That's an absolutely amazing session, Siddharth. You covered a lot in just 45 to 50 minutes, right? So there's a lot that you covered, and it's a pretty exciting topic, right? I think many people who have loved it. We're actually running a little over time now, but maybe let's take a few sessions from the audience. Asari says, which best one jQuery table or material table for server-side pagination? Which one is best? Yeah.
So frankly, I might not able to actually tell, okay, which one is best, because that would be not fair to do. But considering like jQuery data table is still very popular in terms of the front ends which users are developing, right? And React, in terms of implementation or changing the state, I can tell on that React is faster than the jQuery, the way we are doing it. So in a way, indirectly, I am saying that maybe material table would be faster.
Yeah, definitely. Let's take one more, then we'll move to the next session. That's by Gunjan. Thanks for asking the question, Gunjan. She says, can we also e-sign PDFs using Canvas signature?
Consider Canvas signature is basically, how we are allowing user to basically sign in the front end, right? Now, what you do with that base 64, for example, you might have a PDF editor or something. You can always use that base 64 and put it into a PDF as a part of,
Yeah.
maybe first create a Word template and then convert into PDF. But yeah, it can be used.
Okay. Let's take one final one. They keep on coming. Do you think using virtual DOM is faster?
Yes, I think. And it is
Yeah.
proved.
Yeah. All right. So people really loved your session. Patricia says great session. Gunjan says learned a lot of new useful libraries. So thanks everyone who tuned in, and thanks Siddharth. Any final thing you want to plug in before we move to next session?
No, thanks again, C Sharp Corner for providing this opportunity. And I again would like to personally thank you for all the energy you have to host all this. Yes, definitely, this is the first time you are hosting me, but I'm following you on, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter and everything. And I can see every week you are doing all this session. And there is never been, you are never been more excited every conference which you have. Thanks
It's
again for
not, it's
hosting me.
yeah, thanks to you guys who do contribute so much to the community. I really appreciate all that. So, Siddharth, I really enjoyed hosting you. I would love to host you back whenever you're available, and have a good time. And you're based out of India, so once things get okay, I would definitely like to meet you. Maybe in Delhi, maybe in
Yes,
Pune, maybe somewhere else.
sure.
So, thank you,
Yeah.
Siddharth. Have a nice weekend, and yeah, see you on the other side.
Bye. See you.
Bye bye. All right, with that, I know we are running 7 minutes over time, and I'm really excited for our next speaker because I am hosting him after almost 1 year. And to be very, very honest, this person has grown exponentially. This person is everywhere. This person, the first one, I actually came to know about Twitter Spaces from this person. This person has actually hosted some amazing people like Scott Hanselman, and for him, it's like just another day. So what I'm talking is that person is actually Colby. He is an advocate and international speaker. Last year we hosted it. That session really blew up, and I'm really excited to host him again. So without any further ado, let's invite Colby joining us all the way from Philly. Hi, Kobe. Welcome to the React Virtual Conference.
Hello, thanks for having me. That was a really nice introduction.
Oh my goodness, how have you been, Kobe? How's your last year have been? You have been doing great, yeah?
I've been good. It's crazy that it has been a year already, right? It seems like it's been going by so fast. How about yourself? How have you been?
I'm doing great. I got the first shot. Definitely looking forward for the second one. Things are getting okay in India. We are not at 400,000 now. It's only like 90,000 each day, and we are happy about it. So yeah, that's good. And by the way, how's your new house? Congratulations for that, actually.
Thank you. I actually move in tomorrow, so ask me again in a day or two.
Sorry to bother you at this time. I'm
No.
that.
I'm happy to join you all.
All right, Kavir, I won't take much of your time. I know we're already 10 minutes in your session. I'm going to add your slide to the screen. Everybody can see your slides now, and next 20 minutes is all yours.
Awesome. Sounds great. So, hey, everybody, we're going to talk about WordPress and how we can scale it with Next.js. So who am I? I know we had that wonderful introduction, but I'm the one hugging BB-8 and Kylo Ren over there. I'm Colby Fayock. I work with the dev community as a developer advocate with Applitools. You can find me pretty much anywhere on the web by just Googling my name, as I'm the only one in the world. So let's start off by addressing the CMS in the room. It's 2021, and some developers would probably cringe at the thought of WordPress. But frankly, we're still living in a WordPress world. According to Build with Trends, if we look at the CMS distribution of the top 1 million sites, 40% of websites are using WordPress. That's a huge percentage. And I'm not quite sure how accurate this number is and how they derived it, but if you look at the number of detections on the Built With site, it's over 800 million installs of WordPress. That's an absolutely staggering number. While we might not all want to use WordPress, it's realistically around to stay for the foreseeable future. So let's talk about how we can take advantage of the King CMS in a headless way and use it to power our Jamstack sites in 2021. So to start, what does headless actually mean? Well, with our traditional stack, somebody visits a page in their browser. The browser reaches out to the server will do the work like request data from the database, then render that HTML for the page and return a response. If we're lucky, it'll return it cached. And finally, the browser displays that response to the person. With a headless approach, that request to the server is asynchronous on the client typically. In this particular example, the person would visit a page in their browser and immediately get a response straight from storage like AWS S3. Once the page loads in the browser will kick off another request to a server, which can load in all the dynamic content. But I would imagine you'd be wondering, why would you want to make a client-side request to a CMS like WordPress? And that's not necessarily the recommended approach. That's where static site generators come in to do the hard lifting before your page even hits the browser, which has given rise to what people now call the Jamstack. Maybe you've heard of the Jamstack on Twitter, or maybe it's completely new, but what exactly is it? At the core of it, Jamstack sites are static HTML websites. This isn't a new idea, but it's a modern approach. Typically, they use JavaScript in the browser to make any request to your APIs that would provide dynamic data. Or they can use those APIs at compile time and serve that dynamic content without an extra client-side request. One example that we can imagine is building a React app. This would serve as our JavaScript layer. We would use the WordPress API to provide some content and dynamic data. We would then compile that down to a static site using something like Next.js, which, along with a ton of other features, is also a static site generator. Now, if this is all new to you, that sounds like a lot of work. Why not just use WordPress out of the box like we always do? Well, the great thing about the Jamstack sites is they have a lot of compelling features built right in. By default, we're living up to what AWS considers a well-architected infrastructure. These are features that we all care about, like performance, reliability, and cost. With most server-based solutions like WordPress, there are a lot of options to help speed things up. For WordPress specifically, that includes things like plugins to cache, or maybe even some custom work under the hood. But each page is a server hit, which is still prone to its ups and downs. On the other hand, serving a plain static HTML file is just going to be fast. Instead of spending that time rendering on the server, you serve a static file straight from storage or from a CDN. While you can do that with the default WordPress, it's often much more complicated, and some of the plugins that cache might serve an HTML file, but they still serve it from a regular server, not static storage. With any server, we're typically paying for how much we expect our traffic to be. While most of the time, that's pretty predictable. We all hope to one day have a post that goes viral, right? And if that happens, the people visiting our site are the ones that are going to be paying for it with slow speeds or timeouts. There's, of course, solutions like load balancing and auto scaling, but those aren't perfect solutions, and they might not always still handle a really big surge in traffic. Back to the fact that we're serving these static HTML files because we're serving straight from storage, or better yet, serving them directly from a CDN. Buzzword alert, that means that our user-facing website is going to infinitely scale. That static site will survive the Reddit hug of death when your post goes viral. Managing servers isn't always cheap. While a low-traffic personal blog can manage a few dollars a month, the more that traffic grows, the more that the cost is going to quickly grow. While you have those options like load balancing and auto-scaling, those services also quickly add up. And without it, you risk your site slowing down, or worse, downtime. But storage is cheap. It's really cheap. We can maintain huge static projects on AWS using S3 for a really low cost. But even if we still manage server, the usage is going to be much, much lower with only content managers or requests at compile time. While there are a ton of headless options available, in a headless world, WordPress still has a lot of features that makes it really compelling to use. One issue with a lot of the recent solutions is they seem to be developer focused. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to know your audience. If the ultimate goal is for that CMS to be used by people who are non-technical, you're providing an experience that people might struggle to learn and use. WordPress is the most used CMS in the industry. That means that most of our clients are probably already going to be familiar with WordPress. And there's also a huge ecosystem already thriving around WordPress. If you run into an issue, you're more than likely able to find someone who already ran into that issue with a quick Google search. We can also take advantage of a lot of the community solutions that extend WordPress. All right, so if WordPress is so great, let's see what it actually looks like. Well, since 4.7, WordPress by default now supports a REST API. This means right out of the box, WordPress is actually available as a headless API. But taking that a step further, thanks to Jason Ball, who created WP GraphQL, which is a plugin that we can add right inside of our dashboard, we also have the ability to query our WordPress data with GraphQL. So coming full circle, we can take advantage of this approach where we leverage the APIs at compile time to produce static websites. Rather than waiting for a server request, we'll have our entire WordPress site available as HTML documents. And I've done just that with Next.js, which I've created a Next.js WordPress starter, which lets anyone spin up a new static WordPress site with React framework Next.js super easily. I've set this up so that on our homepage, when we're compiling the site, we're first going to reach out to get the first set of posts like we commonly would see on a WordPress blog site. Those are passed as props to the page that's built out React, which I can then use to create a UI just like I would with any other React app. Because Next.js won't know the routes ahead of time, I need to actually use dynamic routes. So we need to figure out all those pages that it actually needs to create. So we grab all of the posts and we create new paths. And we're telling Next to create a new page for every single one. I also wanted to include client-side search for the project. The WordPress REST API provides search capabilities, but then we're going to still hit the server to do that. And since Next.js is built on top of Webpack, I was able to create a Webpack compiler that fetched all the posts at compile time. It would then create a search index with the titles and the paths and some metadata in a static file. It then loads that into memory or even asynchronously on the client, and then it makes the searches right to that index. And with all of that, I was able to get together a WordPress site statically compiled with Next.js. The cool thing is we can couple this with WordPress plugins like Yoast and ACF, where we can give a lot of flexibility for managing our content. These work out of the box with Next.js WordPress Starter. So I know all of you don't want to just see some screenshots of some code, so let's do a quick walkthrough. So here's what I'm going to go through. I'm going to first show you how easy it is to spin up a new site with the Next.js Starter, but that project is probably too much code to walk through today. So I'm going to spin up a second Next.js site, and I'm going to walk you through how that works from a simpler perspective. All right, so grab your popcorn. Let's get ready for the demo. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So I'm going to start off with a pretty basic WordPress site. We can see here I'm inside WP Engine where I have my WordPress site pulled up. And just to prove that it's a pretty simple default installation, we can see here that under my posts, I have some post data. What I did was I used fillerama.io to fill in some content. It's nothing actually meaningful. It's just episode data from Futurama, if you're familiar. But if we go into things like the pages, we can see the same thing. I have an about us, or about and contact us page. And if we go to plugins, we can see that the only thing that I did here, and I actually should have deactivated this before the demo, but we can see that we have these plugins for a couple things. We have advanced custom fields, which I'll show you later, but we have WP GraphQL, which is primarily what we're going to be looking at today. So once we have that installed, the way we can install it in the first place is going up to our add new, where if we go over to search plugins, we can search for WP GraphQL. Oops. I don't know why it keeps hitting enter for me. There we go. So we can see that I already have this active, but this is the WP GraphQL plugin that you can install right inside of the WordPress dashboard. But what that does is it gives us this new GraphQL tab. And if I go inside of this graphical IDE, which if you're familiar with something like Gatsby, you might have already used the graphical IDE, which simply put is a really nice and easy way to query all of our data inside of WordPress. So instead of hitting that REST API, now what we can do is we can come over to this Explorer tab, and we can see that if I go through here with the posts and the edges and the node, which this is referring to each of the different, basically an array of the data inside of my WordPress database. But we can see if I go down here, I can select things like, let me get rid of that since I already have it, but we can select things like my title, and we have my URI, which let's click play. We can see immediately this is going to return back all those post titles. It's going to return our URI. And let's see, what else do we want to add? We probably want like our excerpt to show on the homepage, and even our content. And again, since we just added that right on the side here, we get all of that content immediately in those simple GraphQL queries. So let's see what this looks like in practice. I'm going to use my Next.js WordPress starter. Just let me bring this up a little bit. What it's going to do is we're going to go through, and if you're not familiar with a Next.js starter or a Gatsby starter, we're going to run this simple command, and it's going to basically clone down this website as a template. And then we can see here, all we need to do after that is add this one environment file, which is going to set up the endpoint for us. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to open up my terminal, and I'm going to copy in this command. And let's see, oops, it's already running. But typically I would put the folder name after that, but it's going to give an option for us anyways. So what it's doing now is it's grabbing all those dependencies so it can actually find that starter with Next.js. And let's call it my WP Next.js. That sounds good, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to clone down that template file like I was talking about, but it's also going to install all the dependencies since that's part of the Next.js starter script or the example script in the Next.js world. So now that that's installed, let's cd into my WP Next.js, and I'm going to open that up in my code editor. Before we actually run this in the browser, let's actually poke around a little bit and see what's inside. So if you're familiar with Next.js, it uses file system-based routing. So we can see that I already have all these pages in here that you might typically expect from a WordPress site, where the index is going to be your home page. We even have our post list page, and we have a search page. But again, the Next.js WordPress starter as is probably a little bit too dense to take into account for this particular demo, but it's totally open source on GitHub if you want to take a look. But what we can do is we can add that .env.local file. And let me grab that snippet from the starter page, where all we need to do is insert this WordPress GraphQL endpoint. And back on my actual WordPress site, if I grab this domain, this host from the front, because this is where I'm currently serving my website from, but what it will do is by default, WP GraphQL will make the /GraphQL endpoint available to query all your GraphQL data. Let me make this HTTPS. So now I have my configuration set up. That's all I needed to do. So let's see what happens when I run yarn dev, which is the starting up a development server with Next.js. I'm going to open this up inside of my browser. I could probably just go to it here. And typical with Next.js, it's going to take a little bit of time to actually compile that first site, and it's going to make all those requests to get it from WordPress. But we can already see that it's doing just that, and we're also seeing some extra files in there. One of the cool things about the starter is, in addition to the site itself, we're also creating things like open graph images. While they're simple, it's just a better way to show up on your social feeds. But we're also creating that search index, and we're also creating an RSS feed and a sitemap, because those are all things that we want to make sure that we have inside of our blogs. So now we can see that my new Next.js starter was already set up, and we're going down through these pages, and we can see that that's exactly what we were seeing inside of our WordPress admin. It's a bunch of these the blog posts, and if we click through, again, it'll take a second to load because it's making those requests while it primes the cache. But now we can see that we even have that post page, and it's being dynamically created based off of all that data that we have inside of WordPress. Now we also have like our pages where that's going to automatically be up at the top. We can even configure that if we want with a WordPress menu, if you're familiar with the concept. So it's easier to manage inside the dashboard without having to make any hard-coded changes. But we also have the capability of making the searches, just like we were talking to that search index. So the search is going to be super fast, which is pretty awesome considering that it's querying all of that WordPress data from your pages. But again, while this is really cool, in my opinion, it has a lot of features. It's just probably a little bit too much to dive into for this particular talk from a technical perspective. So let's spin up our second, sorry, hopefully that didn't make sound. Let's spin up our second WordPress site so we can actually dive into the technical bits. And to do that, I'm going to use this separate starter that I created. And it actually has a name. I have to fix that. But it's basically, I call it a WP GraphQL basic starter, because what it really does is it's going to provide the foundation of all of that, where it's just going to set it up so that we can easily query our post data. It just dumps them on the homepage with the pretty much the default Next.js starter itself and provides some dynamic page routes. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to copy that command. I'm going to open back up my terminal. I'm going to cancel out my other project. Let's level up. I'm going to run that yarn command again, but let's call that my WP GraphQL app. That sounds good to me. So it's going to go through just like it did with the other WordPress, the Next.js WordPress starter. It's going to grab all those dependencies. It's going to clone down that template and do exactly the same thing. So now let's cd into that. Just like before, it's going to have the same configuration that we saw with our other project. So because of that, I'm just going to simply copy and paste that same exact file that we did before. I'm going to create my .env.local, and I'm going to paste in that same exact configuration. So let's see what happens when we spin this one up. That's not the right command. Just like before, it's now going to make our local host ready. I'm going to close that tab and open it up again. And we can see that already it looks kind of similar to the other starter, but this is a lot simpler. And we'll see what that looks like in a second here. But as we can see, just like before, we're actually dumping all these posts inside of the default Next.js WordPress or Next.js starter site. If you're familiar, typically it looks like a few different cards that get added onto that homepage. So really, I'm just dumping the content in there to show a proof of how it works and an example. But just like before, we can navigate to the page. And while it's not the prettiest thing in the world, it's just showing how it works from a basic perspective. So now let's go over to the code and see what that actually looks like. So just like before, it's using the file system-based routing that Next.js gives us as part of the Next.js API. So to start off, we have our index.js file, where as we can see here, this is really just a React component, right? So what Next.js is able to do is it provides APIs that wraps React so that we can fetch that data and inject it into our React app. And the way that we're doing this here is if we scroll all the way to the bottom, we're using this function, which is the Next.js API called getStaticProps, where the first thing we do is we're going to get the Apollo client, which the Apollo client is what we're using to actually make requests with the GraphQL API. And once we do, we can see we have this query here that we're simply sending up using the Apollo client, and it's going to send that to that URL that we configured inside of here. And it's going to grab all that post data. It's going to create it as a prop, and even the page settings that we have here, pass them as props into our React component where we can use to build out the API. And we can prove what that looks like, but let me take this query here, and I'm going to go back over to WordPress here for a second, where if I paste this directly in to my graphical playground, we can see the exact data that we're going to get inside of the browser. The first thing, we're going to get that configurable title and the description, but then we can see all that post data, which is exactly what we see on the homepage of our Next.js application. So what we're doing there is we're able to query all that data with GraphQL, which makes it really nice to grab exactly what we want and dump it into our React page. So that's just the home page. Now, for creating those dynamic page routes, we can see here we have this directory called posts, which again, Next.js uses the file system-based routing. So what this is first going to do is it's going to create a directory called posts, and then inside of it, we can see this URL or the file name is a little bit strange if you're not familiar with it. where here we're wrapping that word post slug with brackets. And what that's going to do is it's going to consider that post slug as a parameter or an argument, where it's going to allow that route to be dynamic for us. And the way that it works, I accidentally clicked. So if we look at this file, this looks pretty similar to what we had on our homepage, where honestly, for this basic default starter, we can even see, I just cloned the homepage just to provide this as a proof of concept, right? But if we again scroll all the way down to the page, we're actually scrolling past get static props first. We're going to get static paths, which is again another Next.js API. We're similar to before. We're going to grab our Apollo client and we're going to make that request to get all the posts, because in order to create all the paths, we have to know what all posts actually exist, right? So once we grab that, we're able to loop through all of these different posts, and we're going to say for each of them, I want to have a post slug that's going to be available for each of those posts. So that means Next.js is going to go through and it's going to say, for every single one of those slugs, I'm going to send you a parameter so I can help you build a page for every single one. So let's go back up to get static props. So this is where that comes in, where every time it tries to create one of those new pages, it's going to send in that parameter, where here we're grabbing that post slug, which is exactly what we had configured for the path. And then we're going to inject that as a variable so that we can get that post by its slug, which we're then able to capture that data similar to what we did on the homepage and inject that as a prop right into our application, where if we scroll back up, just like before, it's going to allow us to create our UI just like we would in any other React application. But ultimately, this all gets statically compiled. So let's see how that actually works too. Where if I run yarn build, I think I actually, so in my build command, if you want to actually have it statically output, so the way that Next.js works is when you run build, it's going to build it as a Next.js site, which would be all contained inside of this .next.js folder. But if you wanted to actually build it so that it outputs static HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, so that you can deploy it anywhere with static storage, you also need to export the site. So we're going to do that just to show what that looks like. And in our build command, we're going to run next export. So let me build that again, where it's going to go through, it's going to perform that same operation as it did before. We can see that it went through and built those posts just like before, but this time it's going to provide that extra step and it's going to create a static copy of our site. And we can see just that in this out folder, where let me close these so it's a little easier to see. But in this out folder, we can open up our index file and we can see that's just a static HTML file. That's something that we can serve to any browser, and it's going to be super fast out of completely static storage. But ultimately, that's going to give us the same experience right inside of our WordPress site, where we can deploy that anywhere we want, but it's going to give the benefits of being able to manage your content with WordPress, but also the same benefits of being able to deploy that statically anywhere that you want on the web, and it's going to be super lightning fast. So that's the end of my demo. Let me switch back over to the slides. Okay. Cool. So let's recap a little bit about what we achieved here. So we reviewed our starting point, which was a basic WordPress instance. We set up a Next.js WordPress starter. We even set up a second Next.js site with the other basic WordPress starter, and we dug into a little bit of it and we were able to see how it works. So the goal here wasn't to get you all to jump ship from your current CMS platform and go over to WordPress, but to show the flexibility of it and why it's still a compelling CMS to use along with all the other options available right now. We can come up with some pretty powerful solutions that provide a really great user experience while also making it really performant and cheap. If you want to check out that work, please visit the Next.js WordPress starter on GitHub. It's completely open source. And if you want to learn more about the Jamstack, you can check out my book at jamstackhandbook.com. And that's it. If you want to learn more about anything you've seen here at the talk, you can find me everywhere at Colby Fayock. I'll tweet out a link with everything you've seen here today. Thanks, everybody.
All right, Kobe, that was an absolutely amazing session. As I always love to host you. And you did forget to mention about you're also on YouTube. I did check out your YouTube channel. You make some amazing content over there.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, so we do have a couple of questions. I know we are running a little over time. Let's take one from maybe Mudit. Mudit says, "Do you have to use any particular WordPress provider?" I believe no, right?
Hmm. No, so you can use pretty much any WordPress provider you want. Like that's kind of the beauty of it. Like
Yeah.
it's completely headless at that point. So you're really just plugging in that endpoint. As long as you install WP GraphQL, you can get up and running with any site.
Okay, let's take one more from Patricia. What are the benefits of using WordPress GraphQL instead of the REST API? I think we did see that. That's amazing, right?
Yeah, so the REST API is a completely valid approach and it's an awesome solution. But if you start to get into some of the more complicated bits of trying to query your data, you're going to notice that you're going to end up having a lot of chained requests for those API endpoints. So for instance, if I wanted to get all the posts and I wanted to get the data for each of those posts and I wanted to get some other metadata, it ends up being a lot of things you have to chain. Where with GraphQL, you can query that entire relationship with that one query. So it just makes it really nice and easy to grab all the data that you need, along with it also allows you to grab only the data you need.
All right, makes sense. We'll take last two questions. It's from Gunjan. Does WordPress have something similar to AWS Lambda at Edge?
I don't think that that's
Yeah.
really... Yeah, so Lambda at Edge is kind of like a serverless function on a CDN, right? Where
Yeah.
WordPress is really like a server hosted solution. So I don't think they're really in the same bucket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's take one from Aesthetic World. How many posts does WordPress GraphQL support?
So my understanding is it can support really any number of posts. The only thing that you're going to run into is as you have, if you have thousands and thousands of posts, you just might have long compile times, right? But there's solutions for that where with Vercel, what they do is they have a hybrid approach where you can have it so that it'll only get rendered when you hit that particular route so that you're not rendering those all at compile time. And similarly, Netlify has a solution that they've been releasing as well, where what it does is it's going to still compile your site, but only like the popular routes. And then when somebody hits that, it'll build that route and store it inside of a cache so that any subsequent request to that page will get that static HTML file.
Wow, that sounds so amazing. Do you take contributions?
Yes, please. I would love anybody to help out. I encourage you to check out the issues that are in there. I already am fortunate to have a bunch of contributors and really, thankful and would be glad to have anybody.
All right. So it looks like people really loved your session, Kobe. Thank you so much. Thank you for accepting the invitation. I know it was a very hard time. Any final thing you want to plug in? I know I'm going to catch you. I think I should find a way to bring you back again, not like wait for next 1 year. Maybe find more. I'll hear your Twitter spaces. Any final thing you want to plug in before we move to next session?
Sure. I have a free Next.js course on YouTube. You can go to from design to .dev, or just check it out on my YouTube. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Check me out. Yeah.
Yep, all
exactly.
right, thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks. You too.
For the house, but have a nice day.
Thank you. See you.
All right, with that amazing session, we move to our next session. I know I have to announce the winner, but I'm going to do that after this session. So our next session is going to be by Maurice. Maurice is going to talk about building reliable applications with React, C# and Azure. And I believe this should be of interest of many, many people. So without any further ado, let's invite our next speaker, Maurice, who is a Microsoft MVP. Yeah, let's do it. Hi, Maurice. Welcome to the React Virtual Conference.
Hi, Simon. Great to be here.
I'm really sorry to make you wait. I'm really sorry for that. But I believe people have been putting into the comments that they're really looking forward for your session. And before we actually go ahead and get started, Where are you joining us today from, by the way?
I'm based in the Netherlands, in
Okay.
Zoetermeer, a small town just outside of The Hague.
Okay. And how's things with how's COVID? It's all good. I believe Europe is doing good now.
Yeah, Corona's pretty much running down. The vaccination is pretty good, so we're getting some more liberties here, and we might even
Wow.
be able to go on holiday this summer.
You're making me jealous and everyone in the comments from
I hope
Asia.
not.
Let me tell you
I
that.
hope it's solved for everyone soon.
Yeah. All right, Maurice, I won't take much of your time. I already see your screen. You have shared your screen. I'm going to add it to the broadcast. Maybe you want to click on that hide pop-up that's on your screen of StreamYard, the next one.
That
Yep,
one.
that's it. So next 40, 45, 50 minutes, I mean, whatever time you need, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone to this session on building reliable applications with React, C#, and Azure. And I've got a little admission to make before I start. Most of the session isn't really about React. If you use Vue or Svelte or any of those other front-end React frameworks, most of it is not React specific and would apply equally well there. And on the server, I'm using Azure and Azure Functions and C#, but it's really like if you're using Node or Ruby or Java and Amazon instead of Azure, the same kind of things apply as well. So it's actually quite broad. So some of the topics I want to talk about is using JavaScript versus TypeScript, hosting your application both in development time and when it's deployed at runtime for your end users. How to test your application, how to work with APIs and API type updates, and dealing with the runtime errors, which always seem to happen, however carefully you test things. But a word of warning, this is highly opinionated. It's like how I think you should do things. It's not like a silver bullet, this will solve all your problems. Some of the things I'm going to talk about might not apply to you. Maybe you're using GraphQL and then I'm talking about how REST structure should be updated. Well, that's not going to apply to you. Maybe you're using Node.js with TypeScript on the server. In that case, that problem is going to be solved in a completely different way. So take from this what you like, what you can use, and ignore whatever doesn't apply to you. Another useful thing to know is I'm a big fan of the Swiss cheese model method of risk prevention. And the basic idea here is that you've got lots of small, simple layers which will catch some errors, but not all. There is nothing you can do in software development which will catch all errors. Like you might do a code review and that will catch some coding errors. Now you could do 2 code reviews, that might catch a few more. You could do 5 code reviews, but that's probably not going to catch more. It's just going to make things slower and harder to work with. So having code reviews is one of these slices. Having unit tests could be another slice. Having runtime error detection is another. Automating deployments is another. There are lots of these little slices you should add, which all catch different errors and work together to prevent, well, almost all errors reaching production. But you'll still have some errors there. Like there is no bug-free software, there is no bug-free runtime environment, so you will still always need to deal with errors at runtime. But who am I? My name is Maurice de Beijer, also known as the problem solver. I'm a Microsoft MVP, which explains the C# and Azure background, which I use on the server. I'm a freelance lead developer, instructor, architect. Got a Twitter handle and a website, although there isn't all that much interesting there. My Twitter handle is probably the most interested. And if you want a copy of these slides, I will post them on slide share after the session, and I'll tweet a link to them. So just check my Twitter account. Now, if you're interested in React, I've also got a React newsletter. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to a registration page. If you register, you'll get one email a week every Wednesday afternoon. I send out one newsletter. There's 6 posts in there and one link to a video which I find interesting. I'm not going to use your email for anything else. You won't get any spam. I'm not going to sell it to whoever wants to spam you. There are plenty of people doing that. I don't, so perfectly safe. And if you want to unsubscribe, you can do so at any time. Now, when it comes to building large applications, first thing I want to take a look at is the language we actually use. So traditionally on the web, we use JavaScript, but I really recommend you use TypeScript. Now, JavaScript is a nice language, but it has its quirks, and TypeScript builds on top of that, making it a lot more reliable. As the website says, type JavaScript at any scale. Now, it's true, there is a bit of overhead there. If I write a small demo, I might write it in JavaScript because I can quickly whip things together, throw things together and get it running. But if I want to create a serious application which needs to run for years, where multiple people are going to work on it, presumably when the original developers, me or someone else, have left, then it's really important that you share as much about the code as possible. And you can't tell someone everything, you can't remember anything. I can't remember all the code I wrote. So TypeScript really helps. If you make some assumption about the code which is wrong, well, in JavaScript, it would crash at runtime. Or maybe it would just silently do the wrong thing. With TypeScript, in a lot of cases, you'll get a type compilation error, and TypeScript is going to tell you, oh, you're using this React prop and that's actually typed wrong. You're passing in a string which should be in number or something like that. So I highly recommend TypeScript for any serious work. Now, there are a couple of features I want to highlight, things like typed unions and tuples, which are really nice. With the type union, you can be very strict about things. You could say, well, I've got this property, say birthday, which could be a string or a date, because we serialize dates as strings in JSON. But you could also be much stricter, like saying, I've got a property here, which is, say, search criteria, and that could be either the string including, or starts with, or ends with, or must be an exact match. So it must be one of those 4 items, not something else. Tuples are another nice one. They kind of look like arrays, and an example of a tuple with React is if you use the useState hook. It returns what looks like an array of 2 items. The first is the state object, the current state you're maintaining. The second is a changer function. Well, it's always that structure. That's a tuple, really nice to work with. Optional chaining, null coalescence operator. They're actually in JavaScript, modern JavaScript as well. They make working with undefines and null things like that, which might be there, might not be, a lot safer, a lot easier. So highly recommended as well. Now, you might be working on a project where you think, well, TypeScript is great, but the people that actually started this project, they didn't do that. They started in JavaScript. Maybe that was a number of years ago. Maybe they don't really like TypeScript. Not everyone does. That's fine. So they started in JavaScript, and then it grows, becomes popular. You want to get more reliability. You want to start converting things to TypeScript. Well, doing so is actually quite easily with React. If you're using Create React App, you just start renaming files to .ts or .tsx, import or npm install the TypeScript compiler, create a tsconfig file, or actually it will do that for you if you don't, and you're good to go. But then converting all those files takes a lot of time. It would be kind of nice if you could go to your manager and say, well, we want to make the application more reliable. give us a month and we'll convert everything to TypeScript. By the way, in the meantime, in that month, we're not going to release anything because we're kind of converting anything. In all likelihoods, they're going to say, no, we need to release features for our end users, which makes sense because in the end, they pay for the bills and they make sure that things can get done, and they don't pay for you rewriting things from JavaScript to TypeScript. Now, there are cases where just renaming files and adding type annotations is simple, easy, and will just work, but there are other cases when that's not so easy. In that case, adding JS docs comments will help a lot. You can kind of take a JavaScript file, add JS doc comments for things which are used in other TypeScript files. The type annotations in those JS doc annotations will be used by the TypeScript compiler, but you're not forced to do the whole file yet. So you can do partial file conversions. And the nice thing is when you're actually going to convert that file to TypeScript, you've already got most of your type annotations sorted out. You just move them from JSDoc into the actual TypeScript annotations and you're good to go. Other nice things are map types in TypeScript, and specifically things like read-only. If you're using React, you've got props, and props should never be changed in a component. If you pass a prop to a child component, for that child component, it should be considered read-only. But JavaScript doesn't enforce that. Neither does React. TypeScript by itself doesn't do so either. You define a prop, say, as a type of person. Well, in that case, it's a person, and a person type is by default read-write. But you can define them as read-only, and in that case, you'll actually get a compile error. So let me show you an example of that. I've got a component here, single account, and that takes an account prop. And I've defined that account prop as read-only here. So I've basically said, okay, this is a read-only property. Now, if I did something silly, I shouldn't do that, but I could say account.balance is whatever, I think it's a string. Now it actually complains, oh, it should be a number, so which makes sense for a balance. But now it complains that cannot assign balance because it's a read-only. But if I had left that read-only out, now it would compile just fine, it would be happy. Big no-no in React land. So let's not do this. Let's get rid of this again so my code actually runs. Other useful things are things like React.component props. If someone, maybe your own code, maybe some code you get from a library, exposes a component and you want to actually know the props, well, maybe they exposed them, maybe they didn't. But if they didn't, you can actually retrieve the prop types for that component using component props. Really nice. I use that a lot. In fact, you can do that with anything. You can do that with a function. If you've got a function, you could do this. Give me the return type of that function, or give me an array of the parameter types of that function. And then you can combine those and map those to other types or do something with it. Doesn't matter if this comes from an NPM package, something you wrote yourself, it will always work. Really convenient. Another great thing is ES modules. Now again, not specific to TypeScript. You could use those with JavaScript. And in fact, I would highly recommend you always use ES modules with TypeScript or JavaScript. But with modules, there are different ways you can import and export things. Now with React, you typically see that a component is exported as a default export. And then on where it's used, it's imported as a default import. Now that works. It's not a big problem per se. But the thing is, you can do this. I could say exports default function single accounts. Now, because I changed only this side, the other was broken. And I could make this single accounts stuff. Now I've got a file single account.tsx. I've got a component named single account stuff, and it's used somewhere else under maybe yet another name, which makes it hard to understand what's going on. If I undo my changes so it's a named export, now I know that it's always used under this name. If I want to rename it, I pressed F2, so the rename refactor, or you can do Control dot, convert, actually, no, I'll do F2 for the rename. I'll call it single account stuff. And now you can see up here, there are two changes, two files unchanged. And the other is actually this bank accounts. And where is it? Right here. It actually changed that named import. So tooling, lots of stuff tends to work better with named import and exports than with default named exports. So highly recommended to always use that. Now, in the future, React is going to do that as well. Right now, if you work with React, what you see a lot is this. Import React from React. Works fine, no problem. In fact, with React 17, you typically don't even need to do this anymore, but you still see that quite a lot because then people use React.useState, for instance. In the future, React will stop publishing everything as a default export, so that default import won't work anymore. So you use either of these top two syntaxes. Use named imports, which is my recommendation, or use import star as, which is basically a wildcard import. I don't recommend that second one unless you have to, because it basically means you include everything from React, whether you actually use it or not. In the case of React, probably not a big issue, but if you import something from Lodash that way, you would include the complete Lodash package, whether you actually need it or not. And you probably are only using a small subset of it. Keeps your bundle from growing way too large. Now, React 18 is about to ship, or will be relatively soon. It's in alpha at the moment. This is not going to change in React 18. It's like it says here, React 19 or 20, but it will change and it will kind of prepare us. Now, of course, this doesn't influence how we work with our own components, but I would still recommend take the same approach, skip the default exports and imports. And another thing I would recommend is use ESBuild instead of Webpack and Babel to compile things. This is a screenshot from the ESLint website. And if you look here, ESBuild compiles something in 0.37 seconds. Now, what does it compile here? It's actually 10 copies, as it says here, from Free.js, a graphical library. Create React app currently uses Webpack 4. So the same compilation with Webpack 4 takes 41, well, almost 42 seconds. That's more than 10 times faster. Kind of nice. I like fast compilers. I like fast feedback, so I want my code to compile fast. But that's kind of like, okay. I'm using Create React App a lot to host my application. Create React App uses Webpack. It uses Babel. So if I'm doing that, how can I actually use ESLint? ESBuild, not ESLint, of course. Well, there are quite a few alternatives to Create React App. And one I've been using a lot lately is Vite. Vite is French for fast. It's created by Evan You, the creator of Vue. And it's a slightly different way of hosting your application in development, but it uses ESBuild under the hood. So it's a lot faster. And to give you an example of how fast it is, I've got a little project here, which I created with Create React App, but then I added Vite to it so we can kind of see the difference. If I do npm start, it starts with create React app, so Babel and Webpack. Now, this isn't a huge project, but I've generated some components here. It's like, I think there are 1,000 components or so it's not tiny, but it's certainly not as large as some of the applications I worked on. And if I start it, it takes a bit of time. And in the meantime, let me grab this browser window next to it so we can see when it's loaded. So that took something like almost 10 seconds. I didn't time it this time, but I know from experience that it takes close to 10 seconds on my machine, which is quite fast. Let me stop this and let me start this with Vite. npm run Vite. The exact same application, no change, does exactly the same thing, and it starts up in 0.25 seconds, 257 seconds, 257 milliseconds. That's actually a little faster than I'm used to. It usually starts in around 0.3 to 0.4 seconds. But still, that's more than 20 times faster than Create React App. And it's the same application. It runs just as well locally. It compiles things much faster. So it's a really nice development environment. So I've been using that a lot as a replacement for Create React App. Now, does it work with everything? No. In some existing applications I worked on, I tried to start using Vite and we run into issues where stuff wouldn't work. One problem I've been using or running into was this. We've got environment files. And in React, or with Create React App, if you use these, you have to prefix your variables with React _app_ and then some name. In this case, config origin. With Vite, you have to prefix it with Vite _. So these change. Now, having the same key here twice, if you want to switch, isn't a big deal, but it turns out the change is a bit bigger. If you want to consume them, you run into this. With Create React App, I would use that config origin like this: process.env.create _app _ the name I specified. With Vite, syntax is slightly different. Instead of process.env, I have to use import.meta.env. So if you're using environment settings like this, switching is not as simple, as straightforward as you'd like to. I've run into some other issues where people were tweaking the way stuff was imported and things like that, where you wouldn't use relative imports like this, but you could do something like this. And that didn't always work either. But in most cases, Vite works really well. Now, there is a very nice alternative to Vite, which is called Snowpack, which uses a very similar approach and achieves very similar speeds. So if Vite doesn't work for you, Snowpack is certainly one you can also try. Now, that's nice in development, because running your application fast, having it load fast in development is really nice, but we still need to host our application in production as well. Well, with Create React App, if you build, you end up with static files. If you build with Vite, it's the same thing. It still doesn't use Babel, it uses Rollup, but it still ends up with a bunch of static files. And it turns out that hosting those on Azure is really, really cheap and simple. In a storage account, you've got this option, static website. And you can enable that. By default, it's disabled, but you create a storage account and enable static website there. And then you get a specific container, $web. And in there, you just start dropping your files, HTML files, JavaScript files, CSS files, etc. and you can serve them from there. It's really reliable, it's really fast, and really simple. And let me find the right window. This one. Here I've got an Azure account, and I've got a storage account right here where I've set up, where is it? There, static website, where I've set up the static website. So I can grab this URL if my mouse cooperates. I can go there and my application loads and shows data, and it serves up really well. There's one slight problem with this though. It loads really fast, but if you're using single page application styles with routing, like I've got an accounts URL here, there is no file actually matching this. And if I hit F5 to reload the browser, I get this error. The requested content does not exist. Because now I'm going to my blob storage and I'm actually requesting this specific URL. Well, doesn't exist, doesn't work, which is not so nice. So I do something else. I add a CDN, and I've got the CDN endpoint right here. And I point that CDN right here. The bottom one is the storage URL. So I point it right at my storage URL. Now the CDN, let me copy that URL, is a bit more flexible. It serves up the same application, no difference, nothing really visible there. But now if I'm on the accounts page and I hit F5, it refreshes just fine. So why does it work here? Well, here we've got the rules engine, which I don't have in the storage account. So in storage, it's just serve what's requested, but here I can create a single page rule saying, if there is no file extension, then just serve up the index.html file and ignore all the others. That will be taken care of client side. So a pretty simple rule, and it solves all of those problems. Now it turns out CDNs and blob storage are also really cheap, which is another nice benefit. If I go to the cost analysis for this service, these different things here, Azure functions are running here as well. We can see a projected cost for this month of less than 1 cent. Now this doesn't get a lot of traffic, so it's not going to be very expensive, but this is a really cheap way of hosting a static application. And deployment is really simple as well. So that was the storage, that was the CDN, that was the rule. This is how I could deploy things. I'm storing all my source codes on GitHub, and I've got a GitHub action. And that action basically says, if we've got a push to main or a pull request to main merged, then run this little job. And basically, well, this part first builds it. This part says, okay, deploy whatever is produced in the dist folder to that blob storage. It takes all the files there, drops them in there, and you're all done. Nothing to worry about. Now, if you're using continuous deployment and you've run your tests, or there are no tests in here, but you typically would have them in there, then this would be your continuous deployment. If you're not into continuous deployment yet, I recommend you do, but you might not be ready for it, or you might not even be allowed to do so for some reason. In that case, I would highly recommend you do this for a test environment. So you've got at least an automatically deployed test environment. Now, another thing I would highly recommend is to use test-driven development. And typically, when people talk about test-driven development, they talk about the testing pyramid, and it looks a bit like this. There's a big section on unit testing, which is fine. Unit testing is good, and you should definitely do it. Then there's some integration testing, there's some end-to-end testing, and there is a large tip, which is manual testing. Now, manual testing is tedious, and it's difficult for people to do the same kind of thing time and time again. So it's easy to think, well, only this small change was made. I don't need to test everything. Let's just deploy the application. And then it turns out that that small change has an unwanted side effect, and it actually brings down the application just before the CEO is doing a demo for an important new customer. The bad timing you always get with those kind of things. So maybe relying on manual testing isn't all that good, because unit testing isn't exactly perfect either. I grabbed some memes from the internet about what would happen with unit testing. And this is about two windows. Windows open, and they were both tested and they were just fine. But together, and you might have guessed it from how the handles stick together, it's not so fine. Try to open one and the other actually blocks it. So unit test passed, but application fails. I like this one even better. Got a deadbolt here, a latch, which locks the door. You can close it. Looks really solid, looks well bolted onto the door. So looks like if we close that, that door is definitely closed. So it's locked, right? Actually, turns out that was a sliding door, so it doesn't do anything at all. Well, that's what unit tests are like. They test things in isolation. And that's not bad, but it's not how your application actually works, how your application actually runs. Unit testing is fine. You should definitely do so for all sorts of details about your code, algorithms, things like that, and make sure they work correctly. But for your application, you want to prove that your whole application works. And that takes a bit more than unit testing, because it's not just a sum of units, it's that they actually sum up to something working. Well, that's why I prefer a testing pyramid like this. Unit testing, integration testing, still there, still important, but the majority of my testing is focused on end-to-end testing. And there is still manual testing, because you won't be able to test everything in an automated fashion, but try to keep it as small as possible. Now, let me show you an example, and first let me run the application locally. That's the one I need to stop. That's just a demo, and this is the actual application I'm using. The same client application as I showed online, but now running locally. And here I've got Cypress, which is the tool I prefer, and it looks like there is an update there as well. I can say run all the integration tests. It starts running, and I'm testing all the screens that are there, and it runs in less than 6 seconds, and it's basically tested my complete UI. But this does real testing. It actually goes to the backend where the backend is available. I can fake out the backend if I want to, and in fact, this vehicles page wasn't available on the website because the backend for that page wasn't there, but the accounts and the movies were there. And this uses the same data. It does exactly the same thing. Now, how would tests like that actually look? That's the Cypress screenshot. Tests are typically very simple. So you use sci dot, and sci is the global Cypress object. You can do something like dot visit or dot find by role or dot get with a CSS query, and you get an element back and you call dot click. Now you might think, well, hang on, I go to the home page for the application, and then it needs to load. So if I immediately find for or search for a movies link and click on it, isn't that going to fail because application hasn't actually loaded yet? Well, lots of other automated end-to-end testing frameworks would require you to loop there and or wait a bit for it to be loaded. But Cypress doesn't. Cypress will say, well, if you do a find by role on something and then .click, if it can't find it, it will automatically repeat this action after a brief pause, and only if it hasn't failed, at least by default, for 4.5 seconds, it hasn't been able to find the element you're looking for 4.5 seconds, then it's going to fail the test. That's configurable. You can make that longer if you want to, but 4.5 seconds is pretty decent. So even if there are AJAX requests around this, like loading data from an API, things like that, it waits, and as long as things load in a reasonable time, it will work fine. You don't have to explicitly wait for things. Are actions taking longer? You can specify a default wait period, which is longer, or you can do it on a command by command base. Just depends on what you need. Another nice option is what I mentioned. You can fake data if you want to. Now, in general, I don't recommend you do that because you want to do an end-to-end test. But sometimes doing an end-to-end test means that for a specific test case, you have to massage the data in a very specific way. Or maybe an endpoint isn't available yet. Well, using site.intercept here, I can say, well, intercept all API requests to API/vehicles. And then with this fixture, I say, well, return the vehicle.json file in the fixtures folder. You can also write code here, say I want to return this and that data or return an error code or something like that. You got full control. Then below, I just have my normal test. And the test actually here says, okay, wait for that response to be done. And then the response body is the actual JSON response. So I can actually loop through that, and I'm actually testing here whether the data from the body, from the API request body, is found in my resulting page, which is kind of nice because if the API becomes available and I remove that mock, then it just starts working against the real API and it checks that the data from the real API is rendered. So if I by accident hard code fuel to gasoline, for instance, it would find that and say, oh, hang on, this is, well, aviation fuel, for instance, and it finds gasoline, so that's a mismatch. So really nice. The next thing I want to talk about is working with APIs and API updates. Now, quite often, if you're using .NET on the back end, like I am, and TypeScript on the front end, then there is a mismatch between those. The back end is written in C# code. The front end is written in TypeScript. There is a similarity between the two. They're actually both languages designed by Anders Hellberg, but they're not compatible. So it's not like the front end can directly tap into the types of the backend and use them. Well, this tool, Swagger, or in general the OpenAPI specification, will help a lot. It will let you define what the shapes look like. And if I go back to my console for a moment and let me stop this and restart them. These are the Azure functions I'm restarting, and I'm doing that so I actually have the URL, this URL, which I'm trying to open. There it is. It returns me a UI specifying, okay, well, you've got these and these endpoints and they return this data. So there is a bank accounts, API/bank accounts, API/movies, API/movies with some ID, and it returns these types. So there is a transaction type, a bank account type. Now, these are inferred from the C# types and actually served up in a JSON or a YAML format. On the client, in the client project, I can now use some tooling to generate TypeScript types from this. So on the server, I'm using Swashbuckle to generate this. On the client, I'm using nswag to generate TypeScript from those generated specifications. Nswag is actually very useful for other types as well. I'm using it for TypeScript types, but you could generate C# or some other code using nswag. There are lots of options there. I'm going to skip over this in the interest of time. This as well, that's backend stuff. Let me quickly show you how that backend works. So where's my front-end application? Here, the client. In my package.json, I've got a command nswag that basically says run nswag against a specific Swagger file, and that has a definition of what should be generated and what should that look like. So if I go here and stop this and do npm run and swag, it will generate the current form of the API types for me and update a TypeScript file. Now my TypeScript file was up to date, so it didn't actually generate a new one, but the file it generated was this. So it has the TypeScript definition for that bank account, that transaction, movies, and some more stuff. Suppose a change was made in here, then it would, or on the server, you shouldn't change this file obviously, then it would automatically generate a new file and you would presumably get compile errors. So this command, where is it here, is something I run locally, but I also run on my CI server, continuous integration server, when I do a build. So I know that on my server, I always run against the latest version of the API and I compile against the latest version of the types. So if there is a mismatch, my build fails. Now, another thing I want to do is I actually want to validate my APIs. Or I should say the data from my APIs. Let me show you why. I'm running the application here and I've got accounts and I've got movies, so all looks good. I can check different accounts. Everything looks good. But it turns out if I click on Donovan, an error occurred. Cannot read property map of null. So I've got some kind of runtime error. Not quite sure why that happened, but I can see here that it happened in a specific component, single account stuff, the one I just renamed on line 27. So normally with that information, you would go there. So where is my single account? On what was the line again? Line 192, which doesn't actually make a lot of sense, but I can tell you it was this line. Because for Donovan, this transactions wasn't actually an array, it was a null object. And that's because the types on the server are actually wrong. If I would check the types on the server, it would determine that that transaction was set as required, so it's always an object, then it really isn't. And as a result, if I go here, this is set as an array of transactions. Well, it really should be transactions or null. But that's kind of like, well, my server didn't throw an error either. Apparently the code run just fine. So I want to know that these kind of errors occurred without doing a lot of debugging, a lot of hunting down, because it's kind of like, well, why did that transactions object all of a sudden become null when according to the server it can't be null? In my code it shouldn't compile when I try to make it null. So something is definitely wrong there. Well, what I can do is I can validate data. Now, people tend to validate data at the edge of their application, which typically means when the user inputs data through the browser into the application. And that's perfectly fine. You should definitely do that. But is that the only edge of your application? Well, if you're doing full stack application, you probably think that the front end and the back end is all one big application. And it kind of is. But in practice, with most larger applications, there are different teams working on the front and the back end. And then it's actually much better to consider both of those as two different, related but different applications. And if they're different applications, that means that my API call is actually an application boundary being crossed. So I'm requesting data from the server, the API application. I'm retrieving that. I'm crossing a boundary, so I should validate data. So if I set API validate to true, let me first show you what actually happens. And let's go to the home page. Now, if I click on accounts, I immediately get an error. The data returned from the server is validated, and it says here, okay, there is some invalid type. I expected an array, but received a null. And where did we do that? Well, the API, the path is the 9th element of the array being returned, which is an array of accounts, and the transaction property. Expected array received null. So now I know that that error. Let me quickly do that. This one. So this required shouldn't be true. I have to restart function to pick that up. I regenerate the client types. Now they should be different. So now I should see a change here in function.ts, and now I see that transactions is transactions or null. But now I also get a compile error here in bank accounts where it says here, well, there is something wrong here. And if I hover over, we can actually see what's wrong if I scroll down a bit. It's right at the bottom. It says the property of transactions are incompatible. It's a little hard to read, but in the end, it boils down to array or null is not assignable to an array of types. So I can actually fix that by saying, okay, let's default, for instance, to an empty array, and my error is fixed. And now if I refresh this, it runs just fine again. And with Donovan, I get a nice list of empty items. Whether this is the correct fix, defaulting to an empty array, maybe I should propagate that null through my application. That really depends on the use case. In this case, there is no semantic meaning to null, so defaulting to an empty array is nice. It means that I don't have to propagate that null through my whole application and test my whole application for nulls. So validate data that comes through an API. Another thing I quite often do is I actually do a mapping beside validating. If I look at the structure of my REST requests, then my backend typically has a database there, and the HTTP response for a REST request typically looks like the backend. It's kind of like the tables I store in my database. But in my front end, I probably have a very different view of data. I have the browser there. I might have different cards and say, well, each card has its own data. So I get this flat set of data back, but I want to pass different objects to different components to render and not just pass everything to everyone. Well, I didn't actually do that, but I've got a simple mapping here. Actually, I've got two mappings here, and it helps if I don't hover over something which blocks what I want to show. So on the back end, there is this convention that says, well, I want to use underscores to separate different words. So we've got favorite underscore movies. I might not want to do that on the front end, so I do a name mapping here. Here's another one. There is this transaction date, and on the back end, that's probably a date, and in the database as well. But in JSON, a date doesn't exist, so it's serialized as an ISO string. But in the front end, I want to use that as a date again. So I map that from that ISO string to an actual date object again, and the rest of my application works with that date object again. I typically do more mappings here. I typically do mappings, split out objects, like I mentioned, into different sub-objects, so it makes sense for the client applications. And then when I send data back to the server, I have the reverse mapping there as well. So another thing to do. Turns out there are some more issues with HTTP requests you have to deal with. One which is not very obvious, certainly not when you're developing, is stale applications. So when I'm developing, I tend to press F5 quite often and reload the application with changes, and with Create React App and Vite, you actually get the changes pushed to the browser. So in most cases, you don't even have to refresh the browser. So you're kind of always running the latest. But it turns out that end users don't do that. End users start the browser, they navigate to your application, and they work in there and they do whatever they need. And if it's an application they use a lot, they will probably leave it active. Like my wife, for instance, she opens her computer, she opens Gmail, and then when she's done at the end of the day, she just shuts the lid on her computer. She doesn't stop the browser. She doesn't turn the machine off. She just suspends it. Next morning, she opens it up and Gmail is right there in front of her, so she sees all the new emails. That's fine. Lots of people do that. But that does mean with a single page application that your application didn't actually reload. Even if they start clicking through the application, it's the old previously loaded application which is still active. And that might mean that an application which was deployed 2 weeks ago could still be active in some browsers, even if you deployed a newer version of the application a day later, so 13 days ago. And single page applications suffer from that. Now, by itself, that isn't that bad. But suppose there are API updates, there are types that have updated, properties been added or removed or renamed, then your client might actually get data it didn't expect. Well, validation will help you detect that and detect that something is wrong, but it's still, okay, there is a mismatch. Why did that mismatch occur? Well, in that case, we want to know a bit more. And what I typically do is I save the version of the application, of the API the application was built against. So when I run that nswag command, I also generate this file. And this actually says, okay, this client was built against version 1.2.7832.34422 of the backend API. Great. Now I know if I send this along with every request back to the API can say, well, this client was built against this old version. Time to let them know that that version is no longer supported and we need to update. So you can return an HTTP status response saying, okay, your version is no longer supported, refresh, or you can even automate that refreshing. Some code like this. Running out of time, so another thing to keep in mind is networks. Networks are not reliable. I might be with my laptop in a train or with an iPad or something like that, and the train goes through a tunnel. Well, if my application is doing an AJAX request, it's going to fail because connectivity is down for a minute. Use a retry policy like this. This basically says, okay, go and do the request. If for some reason it fails, wait 1 second and try it again. If it still fails, wait 2 seconds and try it again. I could put additional waits in here, but it will basically handle most network errors. Now, if your network is really down, it's still going to fail eventually. But if it's one of those small transient problems, then this will take care of those. It will just retry, it will fix the problem. Last thing I briefly want to mention is runtime errors. All the error handling, error detection strategies or error prevention strategies you apply, you will still have runtime errors. Make sure you catch them. Errors that happen in a React application in the browser are maybe logged to the console there, but they're not sent to you by default. You need to take care of that. Track them somehow. I typically use Azure Application Insights. Works really well. It will let you track unhandled exceptions, but it won't track React errors by default. If your error is inside a React component, you do need to add an error boundary and track those yourself and send them to Application Insights. It's actually pretty simple. This is all the code you need. I'm using the error boundary npm package, which is really good. It has a fallback component. This is the one you actually saw me running in code. It tracks everything to Application Insights, and using this Application Insights, it's all loaded there. So if I go back to Azure, I go back to the list of services, I should have Application Insights here. I can go to failures, I can go to browser failures, exceptions, and I see different exceptions that occurred there. So we can see that I had 2 different exceptions, and then I can say, well, I want to see that the map of null, zoom in, check the details, see all the other different errors that occurred for that user session, all other things you tracked. I might say view all telemetry, not tracking anything else, so there isn't more, but you could track user events like user opened this page, closed that page, clicked on this button, etc. And it's all visible in here. Call stack is visible in here. In this case, there isn't much because this was on localhost. But if it's minified, you can actually click this unminify option if you've set it up. It's not set up here, but it will unminify your code and show you the correct stack trace, which is really nice as well. So highly recommended to add that in one form or another. So conclusion, wrap things up. TypeScript, I would say a must-have for any serious development. Blob storage with a CDN in front of it on Azure, really fast and cheap way of hosting. Can do exactly the same thing on Amazon or other hosting services. Do end-to-end testing, prove your whole application works using tools like Cypress. Automate your API updates, your type updates as much as possible. Make sure to do that in your continuous integration build, so you're always compiling against the current version, not some old version where you depend on developers to update it, especially if it's manual. Don't want to do that. And track runtime errors. It's not a question if they happen, they will happen. Make sure you track them, make sure you're aware of them so you can fix them. If you don't track them, you won't know. And you might be under the illusion that there are no serious problems because your users are not calling, but quite possibly there are some serious errors. Maybe there aren't and you're lucky, but quite likely you're wrong there. So thank you for attending this session. I'll upload my slides to the clouds later today and I'll tweet it. So if you want to get a copy, feel free. All the pages with code in there, the code is actually a link to a Git repository where you can find that code. So that makes it a little easier if you want to check things out. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for being here. And I'm wondering if there are any questions I need to answer.
All right, Maurice, that was a very, very detailed session. I believe you covered the entire ecosystem of React, C Sharp, Azure, how you can just get started. You went to in very depth testing and all. So I believe when people are going to watch it even later on, there's a lot that they can take away in just 50 minutes. That
Yeah,
was
it
absolutely
is a
amazing
lot.
session.
I do
Yeah,
realize.
that's a really. I'm not going to ask you how. By the way, let me ask you how long it took you to build those slides and demos.
I'm not sure. The actual original slide deck is quite a bit larger. I had to
Oh my
cut a
goodness.
number of items, and even when I was creating, it's like I want to add this and I want to add that, and I want to add say GraphQL, and but I can't. I've already got so much. No conference is gonna give me a 4-hour session. There is so
I bet
much to
we
talk
can.
about.
All right, there's a couple of questions that Maurice, you may like to take. The first one is coming from Umisha. She's asking, is it possible to provide payload for unit testing? I mean, passing data from external file instead of from data.
Yes, well, with unit testing, you're completely free to do the data whatever you want. With unit testing, I typically just create objects, and if I unit test React components, what was the tool called again? MSW, Mock Service Worker, is the tool I use to mock things.
Okay.
If you're referring to the Cypress test I showed, the Cypress test where I did the intercept, there the payload actually comes from a JSON file which is stored along with the test.
All right.
So
All right. So I
again,
hope
yes.
that, yeah. Yeah, yes. And I think one question you just answered is, can we use AWS Cloud Hosting? You did say yes, but that's
Yes,
doable.
in the end, it's just static HTML,
Yeah.
JavaScript, CSS files. So any hosts which will serve that, which I guess is pretty much any web host, will serve.
All right. So people say, thank you very much indeed. Very detailed session. People feel the same. Says, amazing session, Maurice. Well explained. Let us see if we have any questions. Kunjan says, learn new test case to be included. Long living clients.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things. If you're developing, you don't think about it because every client is by definition short-lived. But in production, it really happens that you've got clients that stay alive for 2 weeks or longer.
Okay, let's take one final question, then we can move to the next part of the conference. Gunjan is asking, is it possible to have error boundary be same as app with initial props, not creating a new component and using same app component?
You can. In the end, your error boundary is just a component.
Yeah.
The only restriction is it can't be a functional component with a hook. It has to be a class-based component, but it's just a component. The one thing you need to be careful with an error boundary is it will not catch errors in that same component. So if you turn your app component into an error boundary, only do that if you don't have additional logic in there, because if there is an error in that logic, it blows up. It will not catch that error and report it. It will just unload your application.
All right. I hope it answered that. Pooja says, awesome session, Maurice, sir. Mudit says, deep dive with Maurice. Moshe says, appreciate the effort put in for the session. I mean, if you look at the comments, people really appreciate all that knowledge you've just put in just 50 minutes, and you're telling there's a lot more. So definitely reach out to Maurice DB at Twitter. I believe he's going to share his slides. Some people are asking it. So follow him on Twitter. That's Maurice TV, and then you can stay updated for any of the other conferences that he speaks, and also for this one. Maurice, that was an amazing session. Before we move to the next part of this conference, any final thing you want to plug in?
I just want to say, enjoy the session. It was great that I could present this, and maybe I can do some more some other time.
Yeah, exactly,
Would love
Boris.
to.
We would love to host you back whenever you're available. I mean, we have an Azure Summit coming up in the month of September. That's a week-long conference with over 120 speakers that runs for 7 days. If you have time and if time permits, we would love to host you there too. And yeah, at C Sharp Corner we do 21 conferences in this year. That's
Very
focused on different
impressive.
technologies. And I say that we stream 8 days in a week. We have different live shows that we do every day. It's on Ask Me Anything. It's on sometimes .NET and all. We have different live shows that stream. So I'll stay in touch with you, and we'd love to host you back very soon. Having said
Well,
that, Maurice, thank you so much for your time. I, on
well,
behalf of entire C Sharp, would like to
yeah.
thank you. And
Thank
yeah,
you. Bye.
bye bye. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Bye. All right, with an amazing session of Maurice, I know you have been staying up so late, especially from Asia and parts of Europe. I know it's getting time for dinner, but it's actually time to do some giveaway. I know that. I know you all are very excited. So let's do one thing. So we already have 8 entries. Okay, we already have 8 entries for these winners. But before I do that, right? Before I do that, I just want to spend a couple of minutes over here. That is the Azure Summit 2021. Definitely go ahead and register for Azure Summit 2020. It's entirely free. It's going to run for 7 days in a week from September 13 to 19 with around 120, more than 120 speakers. There will be from Microsoft, vice president, program managers, the engineers, the people who actually go ahead and build these amazing products on Azure. So definitely go ahead and check that out. It's Azure Summit.live. I've dropped the URL in the comments. So that should be definitely helpful. Definitely go and check that out. And also to visit global tech conferences. This is a platform, this is a website where we actually go ahead and add our upcoming conferences. So if you want to attend any of the conferences that we are doing, please visit globaltechconferences.com, and you will find all the conferences and the past conferences with their recording links available. Having said that, let's do it. I think it is the time that we go ahead and announce our winner. So Arjun La was the winner from the previous lucky draw. Keep your comments coming in, and in the count of 3, I'm gonna click on this lucky draw again. So are you guys ready? So it's 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's see who wins this time. $50 Amazon gift card. Who wins it? Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. All right. Oh my goodness, Deepak. Deepak Tevetia, you win $50 Amazon gift card. Congratulations, Deepak. He has been very, very active in the community. So congratulations on that. So Deepak, please reach out to me on Twitter. That is Code with Simon, and I'll make sure I'll do that. But hold on, guys. I think you all have been very, very consistent. So what we'll do is, I believe we will do another second gift card, right? We'll do second time, but for that I need to see some of the comments coming in. Please let your comments flow in the chats, and then we will roll up the second round of this Amazon gift card. Do that. So congratulations, Deepak. We are going to do it again. So please let the comments coming in. I really appreciate that. Let's see what else can be done. I see people were very, very active. Keep your comments coming in. We're gonna do the second round of the Amazon gift card. It's gonna be $50 once again. It doesn't matter from which location you are. Keep your comments coming in. Umisha says a nice session. Thanks, Umisha. Umisha was one of the winners from our previous conferences. She should be receiving her swag pack by early next week. Keep your comments coming in, and I see if I get a few more, I'll run it through. Let's see. All right, let's do the second time. Okay, so we have around 28, 29. Maurice has joined. Many more to come. Right, so shall we do it? Drop yes in the comments. Shall we do the second round? Drop yes, then I'll do it. If you drop yes, I'm gonna do it for the second round of this Amazon gift card. People say enjoyed it. Thanks, Sari, you were very consistent. Vara says good. Okay, right. Umsha says good. All right, so it's time to go ahead and do it. All right, guys, let's do it. And the second round for Amazon $50 gift card winner is. Let's see. Let's see. Keep your comments coming in. Keep your comments coming in. Let's see who wins. Let's see who wins. And the winner is. All right. Oli says who won it, who came into this. Yeah, Oli says you are the winner for Amazon $50 gift card. Please reach out to me on Twitter, right? And I'll make sure that you get your $50 Amazon gift card. And thank you so much, everyone who has joined, especially people who have been very, very consistent. For instance, Asari, you have been very, very consistent. Then we also had Mudit, you were also very, very consistent. Thanks, Pooja Jan. Then we also had Umisha, who has been consistent from our past couple of conferences. Patricia, then Pooja San. Then I also remember Gunjan Joshi has been asking really, really amazing questions. So if you reach out to us, I'll do that. Please stay connected with us, me on Twitter and on C Sharp Corner. We keep on doing these conferences and we do a lot of giveaways. So thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward for more sessions. Have a very nice weekend. Stay safe. Get yourself vaccinated. And yeah, my name is Stephen Simon, signing off with sweet smile on my face. I'll see you every day. If you want to see me, just come visit csharp.live and I'll see you. Until then, take good care of yourself. My name is Stephen Simon and I'll see you in the next live show. Bye-bye.